Chapter 14:26. These people appeared abruptly. There were a total of 4 of them, each of whom was in the realm of the Deshang stage. After appearing, all 4 people's faces were very ugly, and they all looked in the direction of the Taishaman mountain gate. The momentum of tens of thousands of people crossing their tribulation at the same time was too vast. Even if they were thousands of miles away, they could still feel it. However, none of them dared to explore with their spiritual awareness easily, for fear that someone would discover the movement here. When the thunder tribulation was completed and the fire tribulation had not yet risen, there was another flash in the valley, and there was another figure not far from the 4 people. The 4 people were shocked, and when they looked closely, they found that it was their own sect master, and then they were relieved. Sect Masterly appeared a little late, but he still caught up with the last chance to escape. The secret passage in the mountain gate that had existed for tens of thousands of years had become the last capital of their escape. This secret passage, in principle, was similar to the magic weapon that appeared in the Langya well. It was basically a space magic weapon that spanned thousands of miles, going in from that end and then coming out from this end. The difference was that the Langya well could only be entered by dead things, while the Taishaman could be entered and exited by living people. He casually released the few core elders from his spatial magic treasure. Everyone stared blankly in the direction of the mountain gate, and no one said a word. After a while, the fire tribulation was completed, and then the wind tribulation began. The huge wind tribulation did not last long, and it was soon completed. Everyone was counting, it was 9 wind tribulations, and then they felt the 2 auras of Yanglan and Yanglan that were about to ascend. When Yanglan scolded the sect coalition forces, everyone heard it. Sect Master Li and several core executives have been in contact with Yanglan, and of course, they could hear his voice. It seems that the function of the special formation I is true, and it can really make people ascend. Sect Master Li sighed and suddenly said such a sentence. Several core high-level members also understood that Yanglan could cross the tribulation and ascend because their brother and sister were thrown into a special formation I. Now the facts were in front of them, and everyone knew that the special formation I really had a special function, as Senior Lu Fengzi said. But at this time, what was the point of knowing that the special formation I was useful? The Taishamen are finished. Sect Masterly suddenly burst into tears, thumping his chest and stamping his feet. The foundation passed down by our ancestors has been destroyed in our hands. How can we face our ancestors again? Hundreds of thousands of people, including the disciples who had gone out to train, were all wiped out. Everyone understood that it was impossible for the junior disciples to escape from that kind of heavenly tribulation, and in the end, only 2 of the experts managed to transcend the heavenly tribulation and ascend. The fate of the remaining disciples could be imagined. Even if some people were lucky enough to survive, what would happen to them when they were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of sects' allied forces? They had never thought that the sects' allied forces would show mercy to the remaining disciples. Exterminating the weeds from the roots was not a privilege of the secular world. It was also practiced among the cultivators. No, Sect Master. The Taishamen are not finished yet. Just when Sect Master Li was beating his chest and stamping his feet, a core elder next to him said with a serious face, "Sect Master, you are still here, we are still here, the great elder and the others are still here. Although Li Heng made a big mistake, he is still here." The core elder stared in the direction of the Taishaman's mountain gate and said through gritted teeth, "We still have tens of thousands of genius disciples, we still have the demon sealing formation, the heaven and earth boundless origin suppressing formation, and the sect's treasure. The Taishamen are still here. After 1,000 years, we will make them pay with their blood." Yes, pay with their blood. The elders' words stirred up their courage, and the experts present all shouted out in excitement. As the slogan of "pay with their blood" was shouted, everyone's emotions were stirred up, and they were no longer as dispirited as before. Go. Let them be proud for a while. Sect Masterly also recovered, and his expression became calm. He turned his head without hesitation and flew in another direction. When we appear again, we will make them pay double for everything. Several other elders did not speak anymore, and followed Sect Masterly without hesitation, flying towards the location of the Taishaman's treasure. Yang Lan and Yang Lan did not stay in the mortal world for too long. After shouting that sentence, they successfully ascended to the spiritual world, and there was no aura left in the mortal world. It was not until this moment that the Sect's coalition army reacted and rushed into the mountain gate of the Taishaman from all directions. Everything that everyone saw along the way made everyone feel a burst of horror. Under the cover of the continuous lightning tribulation, fire tribulation, and wind tribulation, there was almost nothing left in the thousands of miles of the mountain gate of the Taishaman. Whether it was the house, the mountain gate, or the mountain protection formation, or the disciples' magic weapons, there was nothing left on the surface except fragments. As for the corpses, after everyone entered the mountain gate, they did not find a single one. All of them were turned into flying ashes by the 3 consecutive major disasters, blown away in the wind, and disappeared without a trace, leaving no trace. Everything seemed to be a dream. The Nuwa Taishaman, hundreds of thousands of disciples, absorbed the spiritual power of the world, and created countless masters of the Taishaman, were so easily turned into ashes in front of everyone's eyes. Not to mention ordinary people, even the elders who led the sect couldn't believe it. This was the Taishaman, the world's largest sect. The Taishaman, the leader of the Tao sects, were gone like this? Even if the facts happened in front of them, everyone still felt that they were dreaming. If it was not a dream, how could such a ridiculous thing happen? Even if the Taishaman had offended all the sect in the world, even if the Taishaman had become the public enemy of the world, and even if all the cultivators in the world were to suppress them together, from the beginning, all the sect had made up their minds to destroy the Taishaman, even if they had to sacrifice half of the sect, and not give them a chance to make a comeback. However, the casualties of the sect at present, not to mention half of the sect, not even 1/10 of the sect's strength had been lost. Apart from some negligible casualties when they destroyed the surrounded Taishaman disciples who had gone out for training, no one was injured in the battle against the main force of the Taishaman. How was this possible? Could it be that they were still dreaming? Countless people rushed to the ruins of the main hall of the Taishaman, pinching themselves every once in a while to make sure that they were not dreaming. Seeing that the representatives from all directions had gathered here, everyone finally confirmed the fact that the Taishaman, the world's largest sect, the leader of the Tao sects, had been destroyed. Chapter 14:27. No one cheered. Instead, they were at a loss. The Taishaman had relied on the unknown super spirit gathering formation to plunder all the spiritual energy in the world and created so many masters. However, in the end, they were destroyed by the simultaneous heavenly tribulations of so many masters. Every sip and every peck, was it destined by the heavens? Among all the masters who participated in the heavenly tribulations, no one knew how the Taishaman's demon-sealing formation was broken. Now, all the people who knew about the Taishaman had been annihilated. It was impossible to find them even if they wanted to. Even the chess pieces that the sect had planted in the Taishaman didn't escape. All of them were buried together with the Taishaman. Perhaps a chess piece of a sect had risked his life to do all this. Unfortunately, he had also died. In any case, the sacrifice of these disciples was valuable. From now on, there would be no more Taishaman in the world. The 4 great sects of Taoism were happy. Without the suppression of the Taishaman, the 4 great sects would develop faster and faster. The demon sect was happy. Without the suppression of the Taishaman, the 4 great sects would also have a bright future. The monster clan was happy. Without the oppression of the Taishaman, the monster clan would also have a bright future. The Rogue Cultivators Alliance was happy. Without the threat and hindrance, it was always a happy thing. Perhaps the most unhappy ones were the sect members who had secretly sided with the Taishanmen. However, they didn't have the time to be unhappy at the moment. They should have started to worry. After the Taishanmen were annihilated, the sect members would definitely get to the bottom of it and settle accounts with the guys who had helped the tyrant. If they wanted to live, they could either hide their identity or change their sect immediately. If they were too late, when the sect members had dealt with the affairs left by the Taishanmen, they would definitely die. Finally, after lingering between dream and reality for a long time, the allied forces of the sect finally believed that the Taishanmen had really been annihilated. Crazy cheers rose to the sky and resounded through the ruins of the Taishanmen. Didn't Mao Qi say that the formation couldn't be stopped after it was activated? Why isn't it stopping now? Lady Fenghua's angry voice rang in everyone's ears, reminding them of something they seemed to have forgotten. That's right, everything seemed to have stopped. The demon sealing formation, the super spirit gathering formation, everything had stopped. That could only mean one thing. The array formation could be shut down. It was not impossible to shut down as Mao Qi had said. The super spirit gathering formation was no longer in operation, and the surrounding spiritual power seemed to be slowly seeping out. It was no longer being plundered by the Taishanmen. It seemed that the sect was not at the end of its tether. It was estimated that after a while, the spiritual power of the sect would be restored to its original level. In this matter, it meant that the Taishanmen had once again deceived everyone. The misunderstanding that they said, the sincerity that they spoke of, were completely deceiving everyone. From the bottom of their hearts, the Taishanmen had no intention of shutting down the formation. They were determined to plunder the spiritual power of the world. With this understanding, some sect members who still had a trace of sympathy for the destruction of the Taishanmen no longer had any so-called sympathy. The sect members who were afraid that the destruction of the Taishanmen would not be righteous were no longer afraid. Everyone could stand up boldly. Even in the face of the questioning from the experts of the Black Heaven sect, they could answer with peace of mind. The destruction of the Taishanmen was their own fault. After strengthening their beliefs, it was time for everyone to divide up the Taishanmen. On the surface, the things of the Taishanmen had been broken into pieces. However, there were still some hidden treasures that were discovered one after another. For example, the Sutra Depository of the Taishanmen, the Hall of Heroes, several warehouses, and so on. All the things that were discovered were sealed up by the people of the sect. After an inventory, everyone discussed how to deal with them. In short, the harvest this time was definitely beyond anyone's imagination. The assets left behind by the Taishanmen would definitely bring great benefits to all the participating sect members. Standing on the ruins of the Taishanmen and facing the Taishanmen's relic, no one rushed forward to snatch it. This was already a show of respect to the major sect. Now, they needed a reasonable plan to divide the spoils. Dividing the spoils was a troublesome matter. First, one had to consider the so-called fairness. Of course, there was another premise, which was how much effort each sect had put in, as well as the comparison of everyone's power. It was impossible to be fair and just. How should the legacies of the Taishanmen be distributed? How should the resources of the Taishanmen be divided? How should the territories of the Taishanmen be divided? What awaited everyone was definitely an extremely long and drawn-out debate. Although it only took a few years to eliminate the Taishanmen and discover that Li Junyu knew about Li Liheng's conspiracy, it would take at least a few decades to divide the spoils. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and no longer worried about the future. The Taishanmen's sect Master Li and his party continued to travel carefully. Their whereabouts were concealed for fear that they would encounter someone and be discovered. Even if they could kill them on the spot, they were afraid that there would be some clues left behind. Once the sect's coalition forces found the last territory of the Taishanmen, it would definitely be a disaster for those who were struggling to survive. Fortunately, Sect Master Li and his party were lucky. Now everyone's attention was attracted to the gate of the Taishanmen, and no one would pay attention to an inconspicuous, desolate place. After a few days and nights of careful travel, Sect Master Li and his party finally arrived at the valley where the Great Elder was located. The demon sealing formation was still working. Sect Master Li and several core elders carefully entered the demon sealing formation and walked towards the valley. This was the place where the Great Elder and the others practiced in seclusion. No one dared to fly casually for fear of disturbing the cultivation of the Great Elder and the others. No one noticed that the original demon sealing formation was slightly different from the current demon sealing formation. This couldn't be blamed on Sect Master Li. The demon sealing formation here was supervised by the Great Elder. Sect Master Li had never been here before. How could they find it? However, when they reached the entrance of the valley, Sect Master Li and the elders did not find a Great Elder coming out to greet them. Could it be that all the Great Elders happened to be in seclusion? This is impossible. With the shrewdness of the Great Elder, how could he not arrange for a few people to take turns? What happened here? As soon as they entered the valley, Sect Master Li saw a mess, and in the middle of the valley there was a series of corpses lying side by side, which were the Great Elders who were in charge of this valley. Fortunately, Sect Master Li did not see any trace of the Great Elder. Nothing, Sect Master Li, elders, I have been waiting for you for a long time. A figure that Sect Master Li could never have imagined appeared in front of Sect Master Li with a smile. Chapter 1428. Yang Chen? Grandmaster Yang? Sect Master Li's eyes narrowed, and he stared at Yang Chen, who was walking slowly. Everything in front of them seems to be related to the alchemist Master Yang Chen, who they had never put in their eyes before. Hey, Yang Chen hasn't answered yet, and the two elders behind Sect Master Li have already flown forward, one on the left and one on the right, to outflank Yang Chen. In this situation, the bodies of more than a dozen great elders were placed, and the others were missing, but Yang Chen appeared and said that he had been waiting for a long time. There was no need to ask, there must be something big that they were not happy to see. Anyway, there would be no problem with capturing Yang Chen first and then carefully interrogating him. If the matter is related to Yang Chen and Yang Chen, then it is absolutely right to take Yang Chen. If the matter has nothing to do with Yang Chen, when the Taishaman fled as a whole, it would be a good thing to have a fifth-grade alchemist master by his side. Yang Chen appeared in front of everyone at this time. It was really unlucky. In any case, he couldn't leave. The survivors of Taishaman couldn't let a person who knew they were here leave. The only result of Yang Chen was to be captured and imprisoned by the people of Taishaman, and then until the moment of a comeback. None of the people in front of them thought that the death of the Great Elders would be related to Yang Chen. Don't look at Yang Chen's tribulation, but his combat effectiveness in front of a group of Great Elders was simply a docile kitten. Not to mention the Great Elders, even Sect Master Li and Elder Jia in front of him could easily capture Yang Chen without any effort. It's not that Sect Master Li is arrogant, it's really that Yang Chen, a fifth-grade alchemist master, has never shown any fighting talent. None of the rumors related to Yang Chen were about fighting, they were all about alchemy. On the other hand, Yang Chen's wives were all fairies with outstanding combat power. The problem was that in the previous battle, Sect Master Li clearly saw their figures outside the gate of the Taishaman sect. Without his wife by his side, Yang Chen was a delicious feast for the Taishaman present. Even though they had just experienced the calamity of extermination, no one took Yang Chen seriously. What they were interested in was why Yang Chen was here, what it had to do with this matter, and why he said that he had been waiting for a long time. Yang Chen's appearance was too strange. Everyone had not realized it before, but now they had reacted. This was the interior of the demon sealing array set up by the Taishaman. How did an outsider like Yang Chen get in? Sect Master Li had instinctively noticed that something was wrong. He was about to stop the two elders, but it was too late. The two had already rushed to the left and right sides of Yang Chen. Both of the elders were in the middle Deshang stage. Two masters in the middle Deshang stage, teaming up against Yang Chen in the early Deshang stage, it should be absolutely easy. There was no other way to break through this kind of absolute suppression of strength. Li Liheng was able to capture so many talented female cultivators because of this absolute suppression. The four arms had almost caught Yang Chen's body. As long as Yang Chen was touched, he would absolutely not be able to escape. The two elders who made a move had even seen Yang Chen being controlled by them, and then spit out what they knew. However, after all, hope was just hope, and fantasy was just fantasy. What the two elders expected did not happen. Everyone only saw the flash of the blade, and the two elders began to wail. The result of underestimating the enemy was that the four arms quickly left their bodies, and the pain of losing their arms made the two elders unable to make further movements. Many years of pampering have made the elders lose their passion and courage to fight in the past, and at the same time, they have also lost the consciousness of fighting. Before their wailing fell, the blade had already flashed past their neck. Chi-chi, the blood from the necks of the headless bodies of the two Deshang stage masters rushed up several feet high. The heads had already flown a few feet high, but the bodies of the two were still maintaining their forward posture, but there was no figure of Yang Chen in front of them. The two headless corpses rushed forward for more than a dozen feet before they fell to the ground. In an instant, the two elders in the middle Deshang stage lost their heads, and Sect Master Li didn't even have time to make a move. The remaining two elders, the one with the space magic weapon containing all the reserved disciples of the Taishaman, just released more than a dozen Deshang stage masters from the magic weapon. The other one had already rushed to the side of Sect Master Li, protecting Sect Master Li behind him. On Yang Chen's side, at this moment, it was no longer Yang Chen alone. The figures of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling appeared silently behind Yang Chen, standing quietly, like two slim and graceful flowers, completely incongruous with the blood on the ground. The face of Sect Master Li had already shown a ferocious look. If he still didn't understand that Yang Chen had done something to the Demon Seal formation, then he would be in vain as the sect master of the Taishaman. More than a dozen figures appeared with the appearance of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, and also appeared around Sect Master Li. The appearance of these figures caused a burst of doubt among the Taishaman. "Elder Ming, why are you here? Hu Qianni?" These figures that appeared were all the original masters of the Taishaman, who were kept in the Mountain River geographical map by Gong Sunling. This time, Gong Sunling released all of them. The masters of the Taishaman who were controlled by Gong Sunling appeared here, not to greet Sect Master Li, but to fight. Yang Chen had told Gong Sunling a long time ago to let her try to use the Deshang stage masters in the Mountain River geographical map to increase the power of the formation. Now, Sect Master Li was facing a group of original Deshang stage masters. As soon as a group of masters appeared, they each occupied a position. To be exact, when Gong Sunling released them, they were in the right position. When the masters of the Taishaman were still surprised why these original elders of their own sect were here, Ming Guangruo and Hu Qianni had already started to make their move. Boom, they were in the middle of the formation. The masters who made their move were increased by the formation, and their power was even more terrifying. As soon as they made their move, the remaining dozen or so Deshang stage elders brought by Sect Master Li fell into a passive position. Those who could be brought in the magic weapon of the Immortal's cave, in addition to their important identity, were basically a burden when it was necessary to fight. Under the sudden attack of their original companions, these elders who were brought out were completely suppressed in an instant. Chapter 1429. It was not unusual for a normal array to use a variety of materials, just like the Demon Seal array. It was not unusual for several masters to form a named array to attack at the same time, such as the 5 elements array of the Murong sisters. In the face of these normal arrays, no matter how powerful it was, when one reached the Deshang stage, there would always be a certain degree of resistance. However, the array in front of them was completely different. The masters themselves were masters, but the masters in the array were not masters. At the same time, they became the materials to arrange the array. This seemingly simple but more complicated logic than the ordinary array made the Taishaman elders trapped in the array flustered for a while. Another thing that made all the trapped elders tremble with fear was that Ming Guangrua and Hu Qianni could almost be described as not afraid of death. After being trained by Gong Sunling in the Mountain River geographical map, these guys simply did not have the thinking of a normal person. They only knew how to attack crazily. Even in the face of the attack that was about to hit their body, they did not even look at it. It seemed that they only wanted to kill the enemy. The Taishaman elders, who were pampered, did not know how many years they had not experienced a life-and-death battle. The consequence of being pampered was that in the face of this group of crazy masters, they could not do an effective defense. Flying swords flew all over the sky, and spiritual power attacks were everywhere. Both sides added up to more than 30 Deshang stage elders. The demon seal array was only a few hundred miles in radius. The rumbling sound was endless. As far as the eye could see, it was all smoke and dust caused by the battle. Ordinary people could not see anything at all. Everyone in the battlefield relied on their spiritual awareness to identify and find the enemy. Ming Guangrua and Hu Qianni, the Taishaman masters who were trapped in the Mountain River geographical map by Gong Sunling, were fighting desperately. After a few rounds, they firmly occupied the upper hand. More than a dozen Taishaman elders could only parry and no longer had the power to fight back. The two sides were about to determine the winner. Suddenly, an extremely fierce aura swiftly flashed, and then the entire area within a few hundred kilometers of the Devil Seal Formation suddenly exploded violently. Boom! The powerful explosion directly enveloped everyone in the Demon Seal array, and the power of the explosion was beyond everyone's imagination. It was even more terrifying than the wind tribulation that descended when hundreds of people underwent their tribulations at the same time. Under such a powerful explosion, there were almost no blind spots inside the demon sealing formation. Whether it was the elders of the Taishaman who were fighting or sect leader Li who had not made a move before, including Yang Chen's family, no one could escape. After the explosion, there was no other movement, and the inside of the demon sealing formation instantly quietened down. More and more dust flew in the air, covering the sky tightly. After a long time, it slowly floated down to the ground, revealing the bright and clear sky. Inside the original demon seal array, after the battle between Yang Chen and a group of great elders, plus the previous battle of more than 30 masters of the Deshang stage, it had become a scene of devastation and potholes. However, after this explosion, the ground dozens of feet below the ground was completely turned into dust. Not a single piece of rock remained. The 30 or so experts who were fighting could not be seen at all. Not even a trace of their existence was left. The silent silence lasted for at least 2 hours. The demon seal array was calm, and there was not even the slightest wind. Even if it has become the finest powder, the dust on the ground did not rise at all, as if the entire demon seal array had become a dead zone. Finally, the calm situation was broken, and in a corner of the demon seal array, a figure slowly appeared. When it first appeared, it was still an illusory shadow. After a while, it gradually became a solid entity. Looking at the figure and appearance, it was the sect leader Li of the Taishaman. A burst of spiritual awareness that was so solid that it was almost like a substance was sent out from sect leader Li. The entire demon seal array was scanned and there was no shadow of any living creature. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief, and then he let out a burst of wild laughter. Ha 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 ha! The wild laughter of sect leader Li echoed in the demon seal array, the sound shook the field, and the dust on the ground was shaken. After a long time, sect leader Li's wild laughter stopped, and he looked around coldly. Humph, Master Yang, do you think you can escape the power of my Taishaman's sky-blasting thunder by relying on some despicable means to deal with the Great Elder? Sect leader Li has been depressed since the beginning of Li Liheng's accident, and now he finally spit out that resentment. Although the elders he brought with him have been killed or injured, this also means that he has become the most authoritative one among the remaining Taishanmen, and no one can shake his position. The elders who escaped with sect leader Li, although they seem to respect sect leader Li, will inevitably have some complaints about him because the Taishanmen were besieged and destroyed. Maybe they will replace sect leader Li's position after settling down. This time, whether it is the enemy or his own people, the threat has all disappeared. The sky-blasting thunder that was used just now was refined by dozens of Taishanmen's predecessors after the tribulation and before the ascension with the real human immortal-level refining technique. With the blessing of dozens of masters, the power has been unimaginable, at least reaching the attack power of the 9th grade of human immortal. In particular, sect leader Li took advantage of a group of masters to secretly put the sky-blasting thunder not far from Yangchen. No matter how powerful Yangchen was, it was impossible for him to escape under this kind of attack. Under the sky-blasting thunder, it was believed that there was no one alive in the Demon Seal array except sect leader Li. Even sect leader Li himself relied on a super-protective magic weapon passed down by the ancestors of Taishanmen, not only to hide his figure, but also to protect himself. The real backup force of Taishanmen was actually in the hands of sect leader Li. This kind of major event related to the survival of the sect leader Li would not hand it over to others in any case. This was the last trick of sect leader Li to cross the sea by deceiving everyone. Now it seems that it was very successful. Whether it was the enemy or the possible opponents within his own people, they have all disappeared under the arrangement of sect leader Li. From now on, Taishanmen will stand again in the world in a different way. Dare to destroy my Taishanmen, you wait for my talented younger generation of Taishanmen to grow up, then I will find you one by one to settle the accounts. The enemy in front of him disappeared without a trace. Sect leader Li began to gnash his teeth and make such a voice to himself, and his eyes also shot a firm gaze. Just when sect leader Li was proud, a sudden change occurred. Chapter 1430. Just behind sect master Li, a bright saber light suddenly flashed and swept straight through sect master Li's waist. In the flickering of the knife light, the blade of the immortal beheading saber had already moved from the right side of sect master Li to the left side of sect master Li. Sect master Li stood in place. His body and expression did not change, but his voice suddenly quieted down. Then, sect master Li's face showed a shocked expression, quietly looked down at his body, slowly raised his head, and saw Yang Chen and Gao Yugong's Sunling who were already standing opposite him. Yang Chen and the other two did not have the slightest embarrassment on their bodies, and there was no difference from when they first appeared. They were spotless, and the smoke and dust that had just filled the sky had no effect on the three of them. Standing opposite sect master Li, Yang Chen's immortal beheading saber had been put away. Looking at sect master Li, who was like a clay doll, Yang Chen said in a loud voice, "Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. Sect master Li, you were killed by me, and I will take this cause and effect." Sect master Li was surprised to see Yang Chen and Gao Yugong's Sunling appear, as if he was looking at something incredible, and his eyes were as big as copper bells. After listening to Yang Chen's words, he let out a roar that seemed to be squeezed out. "How is it possible?" As soon as he spoke, his body shook involuntarily, and the upper body of sect master Li suddenly fell back. Until this moment, the upper and lower halves of sect master Li's body gurgled with blood, instantly turning the surrounding land into a bloody mud. Just now, Yang Chen's knife had already cut sect master Li in half, but because Yang Chen's knife was too fast, sect master Li could still maintain his original posture. Now that he said the shock in his heart, his anger was deflated, and there was nothing he could do. Even if he fell to the ground, at the moment when his soul flew away, sect master Li's eyes were still wide open and never closed again. Just now the sneaky little movements of Sect Master Li, how could Yang Chen, who has been monitoring Sect Master Li, not notice it, even if Sect Master Li also has some magic weapons that can shield most of the spiritual awareness of the mortal world, but in front of Yang Chen, it is still not enough. Not to mention Yang Chen, even Gao Yu and Gong Sunling couldn't hide it. How could a magic treasure refined by a human immortal level expert surpass Yang Chen's divine sense? After discovering Sect Master Li's sneak attack, Yang Chen and Gao Yu Gong Sunling did not do anything to stop it. The extermination of the Taishiman's clan was a major event, especially the mastermind behind the scenes. It must not be known to any outsider. As long as they were Taishiman who had seen Yang Chen before, as long as they weren't fools, they would be able to figure out with their toes that something must have gone wrong with the demon sealing formation. The provider of the demon sealing formation was Yang Chen, so the extermination of the Taishiman must have something to do with Yang Chen. If it was in the immortal world, Yang Chen would of course be responsible for what he did, but now it was in the mortal world. As long as anyone in the profound heaven sect in the spiritual world and the immortal world knew that Yang Chen was the main accomplice of the extermination of the Taishiman, not to mention the current Yang Chen, even if Yang Chen was 10 times stronger, Yang Chen would not be able to withstand a few pinky fingers of the master. Because of this, as long as outsiders knew that Yang Chen appeared here, they must die. Whether it was the Taishiman who fled here with Sect Master Li, or Hu Qianyi and Ming Guangrao, who had been captured by Gong Sunling, these former Taishiman must all die and must not be left alive. This was the main purpose of Gong Sunling using those people to launch an attack without fear of death in the previous battle. It was best to kill the elders of the Taishiman, but if they couldn't be killed, they had to die in the battle, leaving no future trouble. Unexpectedly, Sect Master Li's super sky-piercing thunder solved all the troubles. The masters he brought out and the masters controlled by Gong Sunling, under the attack of the sky-piercing thunder, all of them died, saving Yang Chen a lot of trouble. With such a powerful magic weapon, why didn't Sect Master Li use the sky-piercing thunder before the extermination of the Taishiman? This couldn't be blamed on Sect Master Li for being stingy. The real attack range of this sky-piercing thunder was only a few hundred miles. In this demon-sealing formation, it was the best means of attack. When the masters of the world besieged the Taishiman before, it was a big scene of tens of thousands of miles. A super sky-piercing thunder would never be able to kill a few masters. Sect Master Li couldn't believe it until he died. Yang Chen and Gao Yu Gong Sunling were enscathed under his sky-piercing thunder attack. He couldn't even believe that Yang Chen and the other two could be detected by his spiritual awareness under the enhancement of the magic weapon refined by the masters. He clearly borrowed the spiritual awareness of the human immortal level and did not find anyone's trace at the time. Unexpectedly, Yang Chen stabbed him in the back. This knife made Sect Master Li die with a grievance. The dignified Sect Master of the Taishiman would die under the despicable backstab. How could the proud Sect Master Li accept it? However, Sect Master Li never thought that his previous blow was also a sneak attack that he himself despised in any case. Giving him a taste of his own medicine, this was Yang Chen's attitude towards Sect Master Li. Since Sect Master Li did not choose a dignified battle, then Yang Chen would not give Sect Master Li a dignified death. Of course, this attitude was only chosen when Yang Chen was confident of winning. In the face of a powerful enemy, Yang Chen would definitely use the most effective method, even if it was a sneak attack. When Sect Master Li's sky-piercing thunder was launched, Yang Chen's Golden Bell and Gong Sunling's Mountain River geographical map played a role at the same time, firmly protecting the three people under 2 layers of defense. If it was before the destruction of the Taishiman, Yang Chen was not sure whether the Golden Bell could take the attack of this sky-piercing thunder. But the special formation Eye of the Heaven and Earth Infinite Essence Suppression Formation, here, had absorbed half of the spiritual power in the world for 40 days. Yang Chen had absolute certainty. The golden bell finally lit up the fourth dragon's shadow, which also meant that the defense of the golden bell had been improved again. It must be known that in these 40 days, the golden bell and other magic weapons had absorbed half of the spiritual power in the world. Even with the golden bell's big appetite for spiritual power, it was completely satisfied. Coupled with the mountain river geographical map that had been strengthened by the dragon body and also absorbed a huge amount of spiritual power, not to mention the sky-piercing thunder made by dozens of human immortal masters, even if it was an Earth immortal-level sky-piercing thunder, it was estimated that it would be helpless against the abnormal defense of these two things. After resisting the attack, the three people naturally hid under the cover of the sea-pouring jasper cup. The sea-pouring jasper cup, which had also absorbed a huge amount of spiritual power, exerted a strong function of shielding spiritual awareness, and firmly blocked the exploration of the human immortal-level spiritual awareness that was enhanced by Sect Master Li with the help of the magic weapon. At the same time, the sea-pouring jasper cup was also the biggest contributor to Yang Chen's plot. Chapter 1431. Now, the remnants of the Taishamen who fled here were finally dead, and there was no one left. Even the masters of the Taishamen had all disappeared together. Except for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, no one else knew that Yang Chen was closely related to the annihilation of the Taishamen. However, this was only a superficial phenomenon. If Yang Chen felt safe because of this, then it would be a big mistake. It must be known that whether it was Sect Master Li or the Elder who claimed to be in charge of the inheritance of the sect, they all carried Immortal's cave magic weapons, and each of them had carefully selected reserved disciples of the Taishamen in it. Although they did not directly participate in this battle, who knew if Sect Master Li and the Elder had leaked their news to the Taishamen disciples in the Immortal's cave magic weapon when they finally found out that something was wrong? It must be known that as the controller of the Immortal's cave magic weapon, if he really wanted to inform the masters in the Immortal's cave, he could do it with just a thought. Therefore, Yang Chen and Gao Yu and Gong Sunling couldn't relax yet. All of this needed to be handled by them. The first thing to do was to find all the magic weapons in this demon sealing formation, and then check them one by one. Finding the magic weapons was not difficult for Gong Sunling, who had the mountain river geographical map. All the masters could be said to have been annihilated, leaving only the body of Sect Master Li, who was cut in half. Under the attack of the sky-blasting thunder, most of the magic weapons that were not strong enough have been turned into powder. The few that really remained, each of them was a rare treasure. Gong Sunling took Gao Yu and happily looked for the magic weapons that were scattered in all directions by the sky-blasting thunder, while Yang Chen specifically looked for them on the body of Sect Master Li. Almost all the magic weapons on Sect Master Li's body were well preserved, which was one of the reasons why Yang Chen chose to kill Sect Master Li with a knife, so that he would not jump over the wall and casually control a few powerful magic weapons to explode, which could also cause Yang Chen a lot of losses. In Yang Chen's mind, the good things on Sect Master Li's body had already been surnamed Yang since he entered the demon sealing formation. Unsurprisingly, Yang Chen easily found 4 Immortal's cave magic weapons from the Cosmos Belt on Sect Master Li. In each Immortal's cave, there were tens of thousands of Taishamen disciples who were cultivating. Yang Chen first used Shao Tian to swallow the aura of Sect Master Li on the Immortal's cave magic weapon and quickly made his own spiritual awareness imprint. The first thing after finishing was to restrict the access of the Taishamen disciples in these Immortals' cave. Under the control of Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness, he believed that no one could come out of the Immortal's cave magic weapon. It was equivalent to more than 40,000 Taishamen reserve disciples had been trapped in these Immortals' caves by Yang Chen. It had to be said that as the sect master of the Taishamen sect, Sect Master Li really had a lot of good things on him. Not to mention, the crown that could change its shape was enough to protect the blow of the sky-blasting thunder, and at the same time, it could also shield the spiritual awareness very strongly. Thinking about it, not long ago, Sect Masterly relied on this crown to remain unscathed under the attacks of the heaven-shaking thunder, which did not distinguish between friend and foe. Gao Yu already had the dragon horn double flying sword as her life source magic weapon, the puppet made of the corpse of the second city master as a means of transportation, and the emperor's aura, but she still lacked a powerful protective magic weapon. This crown was just right. The crown itself had a transformation function. As long as Gao Yu controlled it to change into another shape and let Shao Tian swallow the aura of all the refiners, who could recognize that this was the magic weapon of Taishanmen, a hairpin that could increase the spiritual awareness for a short period of time, could make the user's spiritual awareness reach the level of the second-grade human immortal in a short period of time. This basically meant nothing to Yang Chen, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling, but after changing its appearance, it was still a good thing in the Chunyang Palace. Other various resources and magic weapons could almost be described as innumerable. It may be that Sect Master Li was aware of the great danger this time in advance, so Sect Master Li almost emptied the warehouse of the Taishanmen. At least most of the Taishanmen's treasures were on Sect Master Li. The masters of the major sect that besieged the Taishanmen would soon discover that although they did not spend much effort to eliminate the Taishanmen and occupied the territory of the Taishanmen, they did not get much benefit. In addition to eliminating the Taishanmen, the most powerful enemy or competitor, there were basically no material benefit. The only thing the masters of the major sect could do was to hope that the series of heavenly tribulations did not destroy too many things. The magic weapons of the hundreds of thousands of Taishanmen disciples who died may make up for their fear for more than a month, but the real secret treasures of the Taishanmen, whether it was the capital accumulated by the Taishanmen for a comeback or the good things in the warehouse of the Taishanmen, basically fell into the hands of Yang Chen and Gao Yu Gong Sunling. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling did not search for a long time, and soon returned to Yang Chen's side happily. Gong Sunling handed a miniature mountain to Yang Chen, as if she was asking for credit. "My husband, I found a magic treasure of an immortal's cave, and there are many Taishanmen disciples in it. All the magic treasures of the immortal's cave contained the hope of the Taishanmen in the future. Basically, they were mainly in the Yuanying stage and below, and all of them were talented cultivators. It was a pity that these people met Yang Chen, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling. The cultivation of the Deshang stage suppressed them, and they were unable to resist at all. As they could be used to contain the hope of the Taishanmen in the future, these 5 magic treasures of the Immortal's Cave were very strong. Even under the attack of the thunder, the miniature mountain did not collapse, but was slightly damaged. As long as it was slightly refined and supplemented, it would be another rare magic treasure of the Immortal's Cave. My husband, what should we do with these people? Gao Yu understood the seriousness of the matter. Every living Taishanmen disciple in these Immortals' caves was a threat enough to destroy their family of 3 and even the entire Chunyang Palace. As long as one person leaked the news that the 3 of them were here, what awaited Yang Chen's family and even the entire Chunyang Palace was a disaster. Perhaps there would not be too much threat in the mortal world, but as long as they ascended to the spiritual world, they would definitely be killed by the people of the Xiantian sect. After the masters of the Deshang stage in the mortal world ascended, even if they were as strong as Yang Chen, they were just the lowest small fish in the spiritual world. Those real masters might be able to kill them dozens of times with a sneeze. In fact, Gao Yu did not need to ask to know that there was only one ending for those Taishanmen disciples, and that was complete death. However, could their husband kill tens of thousands of people at a time? Chapter 1432. Let me deal with it. You don't have to worry about it. Yang Chen took the magic weapon of the Immortal's Cave handed over by Gong Sunling and carefully explored it. After letting Shao Tian swallow the aura of the original owner, together with the 4 magic weapons of the Immortal's Cave in his own hands, they were all sent to Gong Sunling's hands. Husband, Gong Sunling asked in confusion. Why did Yang Chen give these things to her? Not only Gong Sunling, but even Gao Yu had the same doubts. Use the Mountain River geographical map to integrate and refine these space magic weapons. Yang Chen explained with a smile. As for those people inside, all of them will faint, and after searching, put them in my medicine garden for me to take away. The 5 magic weapons of the Immortal's cave were almost the strongest spatial magic weapons in the mortal world. Integrated into the Mountain River geographical map, it could more effectively increase the power of the Mountain River geographical map. Now that Gong Sunling was a master of the Deshang stage, the Mountain River geographical map, which was originally unable to further sacrificial refine, could now be integrated with these space magic weapons to improve its power. For Yang Chen's instructions, Gong Sunling would never have any discount in the implementation and immediately followed her husband's instructions. As long as these Immortals' caves entered the Mountain River geographical map, then the people inside could almost be said to have no control over their own life and death. If Gong Sunling wanted them to faint, they would never wake up. Even the masters of the Deshang stage could not resist, let alone these future genius disciples below the Yuanying stage. To be selected as a reserve disciple by the Taishanmen, the cultivation aptitude was a selection criterion, but more importantly, the loyalty of these people to the Taishanmen was absolutely credible. It was based on this that Yang Chen never had the intention to recruit these people. Moreover, it was simply unrealistic to recruit tens of thousands of people. As long as one person, they could put Yang Chen's family and Chunyang Palace into a disaster. How to deal with these 50,000 Taishanmen disciples, Yang Chen was actually a little hesitant at the beginning. Although it was one thing to kill Sect Master Li and those elders in front of him, it was another thing to silently kill 50,000 people. However, after calculating the days, Yang Chen suddenly made a decision. He already had an idea of how to deal with the 50,000 people, so he didn't have to worry about it anymore. Even so, Yang Chen was still unwilling to let Gao Yu and Gong Sunling know. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were also smart and didn't ask much. Anyway, their husband would never harm them. This was enough. Not to mention the life and death of 50,000 people, even if it was 500,000 people, so what? Gong Sunling was very happy to refine the cave abode. With the experience of refining the Languel, refining these 5 cave abodes, which were countless times smaller than the space of the Languel, was very easy. It didn't take long for her to finish refining them. Those Taishanmen disciples all fainted and then waited for Gong Sunling to plunder their belongings one by one. For the time being, they were placed in the Mountain River geographical map and waited for Yang Chen to ask for them at any time. Husband, the traces here are too obvious. What should we do? Gong Sunling was busy refining the space, but Gao Yu talked to Yang Chen about something else. In this area covered by the Demon Ceiling Formation, there was originally a Demon Ceiling Formation inside, but it was forcibly broken by Yang Chen. In addition, there were so many great elders fighting and finally, it was hit by Sect Master Li's heaven-blasting thunder. It had already become a scene of devastation. As long as someone came here, they could see what had happened here. Even Sect Master Li had fled here. The Taishanmen seemed to have been exterminated, but it was impossible for them to be completely exterminated. There were hundreds of thousands of Taishanmen disciples, and there were always people who went out to gain experience. There were many people who did not rush back to Taishanmen after getting the news, so the news of the Taishanmen being exterminated could not be hidden from the mysterious Heaven sect. It was just a matter of time. Once someone knew about this place and came to investigate, the situation here would inevitably be exposed. Although the traces of fighting could not explain anything, if someone wanted to have a relationship with the Demon Ceiling Formation, Yang Chen would not be able to escape the suspicion and pursuit of the mysterious Heaven sect. Yang Chen was a person who had been reborn, so he naturally did things without any loopholes. When Gao Yu asked about this matter, Yang Chen almost thought of a solution in the blink of an eye. It's simple. Just remove the Demon Ceiling Formation, and then someone will cross the wind tribulation here. Yang Chen answered Gao Yu with a smile. As long as someone crossed the tribulation here, it would be contaminated with the aura of the wind tribulation. All the environment would be destroyed, so naturally, no one would suspect anything. This was the place where the great elders of the Taishanmen secluded themselves. So what if there were a few people crossing the tribulation? Those elders later found that they could not do anything, so it did not seem unusual for them to choose to cross the tribulation. There is a way, but where can I find someone to cross the tribulation? Gao Yu recognized Yang Chen's method, but this method immediately brought a new problem. Those who crossed the tribulation would definitely find that there was something abnormal here. Was it necessary to find a trustworthy master of the Chunyang Palace and forcibly use the 100-year pill to improve their cultivation and forcibly cross the tribulation? There is no need to be so troublesome. There is someone crossing the tribulation in front of us. Yang Chen smiled and took out his pure bottle medicine garden. When Gao Yu saw the pure bottle medicine garden, she suddenly understood. The pure bottle medicine garden had absorbed spiritual power for 40 days in the special eye of the universe everlasting spirit suppression formation. In these 40 days, half of the spiritual power in the world had been cleansed. It could almost be said that it had been completely sacrificial refined several times, and the quality had improved by more than a little. Among them, the greatest benefits were the tool spirits of the medicine garden, a Zhu and a Bai. The spiritual power that the medicine garden could carry was limited, so most of the spiritual power was absorbed by a Zhu and a Bai. If a Zhu and a Bai did not have a stronger ability to absorb more spiritual power before, but after the integration of the Immortal Peach and the Blood Phantom Vine, the bodies of the two women were close to the edge of the tribulation at any time. Their own strength brought about more absorption of spiritual power, even without Yang Chen's hands. They controlled the medicine garden and forcibly sacrificially improved the medicine garden by a few levels in the scouring of spiritual power. After absorbing so much spiritual power, they now completely exceeded the strength of the tribulation. It was only because of the protection of the demon seal formation that the tribulation did not fall. Now at this time, it was time for a Zhu and a Bai to cross the tribulation. The two tool spirits crossed the tribulation at the same time. The wind tribulation would be twice as strong as the ordinary tribulation. The power of the tribulation could completely cover this area and completely turn this area into a place where the tribulation raged. Even if more people came to investigate, they could only come to one conclusion at that time. Someone here was just crossing the tribulation and ascending, there would be no other possibility. A Zhu, a Bai, it's time for you to cross the tribulation. Yang Chen summoned a Zhu and a Bai and explained the reason why he wanted them to cross the tribulation at this time. He did not forget to give the two women great benefits. After the tribulation is successful, I will give you the gourd of the dragon clan and let you refine it. Chapter 1433. The dragon gourd was obtained by Yang Chen from the treasure house of the Dragon Palace. It could contain almost all the liquids in the world, including all kinds of spiritual solutions and even the black liquid of the ultimate demonized vine. It was definitely a powerful magic weapon refined by the Dragon Clan. A Zhu and a Bai knew about this gourd. When they heard Yang Chen's words, the two women were pleasantly surprised. If they could really integrate and refine the dragon gourd, then the bottleneck of the original medicine garden's limited capacity of spiritual power would completely disappear. The dragon gourd could contain almost unlimited spiritual power. At that time, it would be enough for all the medicinal herbs in the medicine garden to not worry about the lack of spiritual power for thousands of years. Their own strength had already reached the realm of crossing their tribulation, and with the stimulation of Yang Chen's reward, and the experience of watching the dragon spirit's tribulation last time, the two women were now eager to try. Gong Sunling did not delay time, and soon the outermost demon seal array was withdrawn into the mountain river geographical map. The next moment, a Zhu and a Bai flew into the air with the medicine garden's body, just in the center of this hundreds of miles area. The universe everlasting spirit suppressing formation was definitely a powerful formation, especially after being edified in the special formation I. It was even more incredible. Yang Lan and Yang Lan were able to reach the realm of absolute strength tribulation in just a few dozen days. They didn't have to consider anything like the state of mind at all, and they could resist the heavenly tribulation. Even Yang Lan of the Yuanying stage and Yang Lan of the Jedan stage could be forcibly promoted to this realm, not to mention a Zhu and a Bai who were already on the verge of crossing their tribulation. Even if the many magic weapons shared half of the spiritual power in the world, it was enough for a Zhu and a Bai to completely ignore the ordinary wind tribulation by relying on that. Even if their own strength was strong, the heavenly tribulation would be several times stronger, and at the same time, the tribulation would strengthen the power of the heavenly tribulation. At this time, a Zhu and a Bai were not worried about failing the tribulation at all. This was the effect of confidence. The same principle had appeared with Wang Yong in the past. Now Yang Chen used another way to tell the two women that he was optimistic about them by giving the dragon gourd to them. The two women had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. How could they not understand it? A Zhu and a Bai, as the tool spirits, knew what it meant to be favored by Yang Chen. Under the dual stimulation of strong confidence and strength, the two women even burst out with unprecedented passion. Originally, Yang Chen still had some encouragement and excitement, but when the first wind tribulation fell, Yang Chen could already be completely sure that a Zhu and a Bai would have no problem passing the wind tribulation. This was the second time for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling to see the artifact spirit's tribulation, and they couldn't help but feel envious. However, this kind of thing was fate and could not be forced. It was not easy to find a creature that was willing to be an artifact spirit. In addition, it was indeed difficult to find an artifact spirit that was worthy of the two women's life-bonded magic treasures. They did not have Yang Chen's heaven-defying luck to be able to find a Zhu and a Bai first, and then find a dragon spirit. Whether it was the tribulation of an expert or a weapon spirit, it was a rare experience for the three of them, especially a wind tribulation of this scale. Apart from the time when Tao Junkie crossed her tribulation, the one they had seen was the most powerful one. Of course, the scene of Taishiman's Yang Lan and Yang Lan pulling more than a dozen great elders into the tribulation at the same time was impossible for them to see. This time, it was a little compensation. This was the thought in Yang Chen's heart. If the masters of the major sect who besieged Taishiman knew about it, they would definitely spit out a mouthful of old blood. Was this just a little compensation? It must be known that the reserve materials of the entire Taishiman, the capital that Taishiman prepared for a comeback in case of an emergency, all fell into the hands of Yang Chen and his wife. Coupled with the family property that sect masterly brought out this time, it could be said that more than 70% of the wealth of Taishiman had fallen into the hands of Yang Chen and Gao Yugong Sunling. The major sect worked hard, and in the end, they only got 30% of the benefits, and there were so many sects to share, among which there was a share of Taishiman. At the same time, they also had to compensate Yang Chen's wives and concubines for paying the pure true fire forth fire god Thunder. It could fall into the hands of every sect. It could be said that it was extremely shameful. Yang Chen and Gao Yugong Sunling got great benefits, but they also said that they had barely received some compensation. This kind of mentality was really a bit unkind. However, who knew? Even if it was the head of the palace, it was impossible to know this. It was even more impossible to know that before Yang Chen joined the Chunyang Palace, he had already made up his mind to destroy the Taishiman. A Zhu and a Bai did not let Yang Chen and the others wait for long. The 9 wind tribulations came one after another, and they did not show any trick. They just methodically dealt with the tribulations step by step. In addition to the aura of the tribulations that enveloped thousands of miles, giving the area originally covered by the demon seal array a solid imprint of the scene after the tribulations, the overall process was calm and peaceful. When a Zhu and a Bai appeared in front of Yang Chen again with a smile like a flower, Yang Chen just smiled and said congratulations, and then put the Dragon Clan's gourd in the pure bottle medicine garden. This was the reward promised to the two women. As for how the two women refined and integrated it, it was the two women's own business. In terms of cultivation alone, the two women had surpassed Yang Chen, but because they were tool spirits, they could not take the initiative to ascend and could only stay with Yang Chen. There is plenty of time to refine and integrate, let's pick up the people first. Yang Chen did not let a Zhu and a Bai start refining and integrating immediately, but first let Gong Sunling send 50,000 Taishaman disciples into the medicine garden. With a Bai there, the body of the demonized blue jade blood phantom vine could definitely make those people fall into a coma forever and never wake up again. After doing all this, the three did not stay here for a moment. Yang Chen directly brought the two women into the shuttle and quickly flew in the direction of the Chunyang Palace. The harvest this time, no one can say anything, it's good to make a fortune quietly. Yang Chen once again told Gao Yu and Gong Sunling those things, if they can be used, then use them. If they can't be used, find a way to change their appearance in the future and slowly sell them. We have hundreds of years to do this slowly, there is no hurry. Both women nodded with a smile on their faces. The harvest was good, but what really made them happy was that they shared a secret with their husband. This secret was unknown to the other sisters, and it was their husband who specifically told no one to say it. This feeling of sharing a secret with their husband was what they cared about the most. Ignoring the happiness of the two women, Yang Chen's mind had already flown to another place. That person should already be born, these 50,000 people were just enough for him to end his karma. Chapter 1434. The masters of the major sect had gathered at the original site of the Taishaman to carry out the final cleanup work. The entire Taishaman mountain gate was no longer as prosperous as it used to be. Instead, it was in ruins. After 3 consecutive heavenly tribulations, Super Thunder Tribulation, Super Een Fire Tribulation, and Super Wind Tribulation, the masters besieging them didn't even need to make a move. The Taishaman, who had unlocked the demon sealing formation, had become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. No one had expected such an outcome, but everyone was exceptionally glad that it was such an outcome. The Taishaman were the unlucky ones. They were everyone's enemies, so this was the best result. If the same misfortune had befallen the allied forces of the major sect, everyone felt a chill just thinking about it. Fortunately, the tragedy had befallen the Taishaman. Not only had the Taishaman mountain gate been directly destroyed, but the masters who had come to encircle the Taishaman had not been stained with the blood of the Taishaman. The people from the small sect were not clear about this, but the people from the major sect all knew that the heavenly court had changed. The mysterious heaven sect was now in charge. Even if the Taishaman had angered the public this time and been destroyed, the mysterious heaven sect had nothing to say. The problem was that the mysterious heaven sect would find other reasons to deal with the masters who had participated one by one. Once they were targeted by the masters of the mysterious heaven sect, it could be said that their future path of cultivation would be extremely dangerous. Now, everyone had not been stained with the blood of the Taishaman. Even if they ascended to the spiritual realm or the celestial realm, they did not have to worry too much about the mysterious heaven sect's investigation. After all, even if the mysterious heaven sect was 10 times stronger, it was impossible for them to become the enemy of all the sect in the world. The current situation was just right. Everyone had not been stained with too much blood. The Taishaman had been destroyed by the Taishaman themselves. Everyone had just come to reason with the Taishaman. No matter how strong the mysterious heaven sect was, they couldn't just let others reason with them, right? Therefore, the experts of the major sect could plunder the Taishaman's original territory without any qualms. While they were looking for the fish that escaped the net, they were also collecting the spoils of war. Fortunately, everyone knew that it would be very troublesome to face the behemoth that was the mysterious heaven sect in the future. Thus, everyone restrained themselves when searching for the spoils of war and didn't fight. Under the coordination of several large sects of the Tao, Devil, Monster, and Rogue Cultivators Alliance, there wasn't any big trouble and everything seemed to be in order. No one had expected that the colossal Taishaman would fall so quickly and so thoroughly. Although it was still uncertain how many Taishaman were still outside and how many of them had escaped this time, everyone was certain that the Taishaman were finished. They would never have a chance to make a comeback. It wasn't that the Taishaman didn't have a backup plan, but all the sect wouldn't allow the Taishaman to rise again. This time, the Taishaman could be said to be the public enemy of the world. No sect would allow such a tragedy to happen again. That terrifying array directly absorbed the spirit energy of the world for the sect to use. For the past 40 days, the experts of the major sect had watched the spirit energy of the world gather in the Taishaman, but they couldn't do anything about it. This kind of situation couldn't happen again. The destruction of the Taishaman was already a fact. Next, it was time for everyone to sit down and eat the spoils. The resources left by the greatest heaven sect and the territory left would be divided according to how much effort they made this time under the auspices of several major sections. Very few people argued about this. This was something left behind by the Taishaman. Whoever took the most would have to bear the wrath of the mysterious heaven sect in the spiritual realm in the future. In addition to the super big sect, some of the experts from the small sect who participated even said that they only needed some simple spirit stones, elixirs, and materials. The ones who really dared to reach out were the big sect that could already wrestle with the Taishaman. This was simple. The Taishaman's territory was in the Tao sect, so it was obviously impossible for the Devil sect and the Devil sect to accept it. This directly benefited the 4 big Tao sects. They weren't afraid that the mysterious heaven sect would settle the score later and directly divide the territory and the spirit veins. The big Tao sect occupied the territory, so they didn't have a share of the wealth. The resources of the Taishaman were distributed to the Devil sect and the Devil sect. Although it was more difficult for them to cultivate directly in the past, the cultivation methods in the world were all comprehensible, especially the orthodox cultivation methods of the greatest heaven sect. No matter who it was a useful reference. As for the various elixir recipes and array formations, they were definitely good things that could be collected by the Taishaman. They could be used anywhere, so no one would refuse them. As for the various medicinal herbs and refining materials, no one would dislike them. The more, the better. The Devil sect and the Devil sect didn't stand on ceremony. Each of the Taishaman's sutra depository made a copy. The Devil sect and the Devil sect each took a third of the items in the warehouse. The remaining third was distributed to the experts from the small sect who contributed. The Taishaman was indeed worthy of being the number 1 sect in the world. All kinds of magic treasures, elixirs, and spirit stones that they didn't have time to take away were piled up like a small mountain. Every expert who participated in this matter didn't fall behind. Everyone had a share, and almost everyone was satisfied. Almost all the cultivators in the world were running around telling each other, drinking and celebrating this great news that made everyone happy. Even the low-level cultivators who weren't qualified to participate were the same. The heaven and earth boundless original suppression formation didn't just affect the experts, but all the cultivators. While they were dividing the loot, there was another thing that needed to be done immediately, and that was to deal with the small sect that originally attached themselves to the Taishaman. To put it bluntly, these small sect attached themselves to the Taishaman were the dogs and hawks of the Taishaman. Usually, they relied on the support of the Taishaman to act like tyrant. Even some of the dirty work that the Taishaman couldn't do was done by these small sect. With the Taishamen supporting these sect from behind, countless cultivators who had suffered losses didn't dare to say anything. Now that the Taishamen had been exterminated, the previous debts had to be properly settled. Since the Taishamen had been exterminated, these dogs and hawks naturally couldn't be left alive. Whether it was to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, or to take revenge, it would be another round of killing. Naturally, the resources of these sect would also belong to whoever did it, and no one would fight for it. In the world of cultivators, there were countless rewards for the disciples of the Taishamen. No matter who it was, as long as they found a disciple of the Taishamen who escaped the net, they could bring their heads to the big sect to receive the reward without any reason. Killing without teaching? When the Taishamen used the heaven and earth boundless original suppression formation, they didn't inform everyone. What everyone did was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Chapter 1435. In this storm, the pure Yang Palace did not stand out in particular. It was average. Apart from blocking a few tribulation transcendence masters in a certain direction, there was almost nothing else that could be praised. Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue, Shi Wushuang, and the Murong sisters all fought with their respective sect. In addition to contributing the fourth fire divine thunder, they also killed some masters. On the contrary, Yang Chen, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling did not appear at all, let alone make any contributions. This made Yang Chen's wives and concubines feel very strange. When Yang Chen separated, he also told them to follow the pace of their respective sect masters, but he did not appear with Chunyang Palace. It was really unreasonable. However, there was absolutely no doubt that their husband must have taken advantage of them in other places. What was distributed to Chunyang Palace was a large number of spirit stones and 100,000 volumes of ancient books of Taishamen. The ancient books of the Taishamen's Sutra Depository could not be distributed to all sect without limit. After being divided by the big sect, the order was completely disrupted, and the people of the small sect could draw whatever they wanted. No one was dissatisfied. Since they did not have the strength to bear the anger of Xiantian sect, they should not do anything to further anger Xiantian sect. It was already a blessing to get these ancient books, and no one would ask for more. Even if they were greedy people, they would have a sense of propriety in this matter. If they were too greedy, not to mention facing Xiantian sect in the spiritual world, these big sect in the mortal world would not let them have an easy time. For the people of Chunyang Palace, as long as the Taishamen were destroyed, it was already the biggest gain. The hatred of the Taishamen against Chunyang Palace could be said to have been cleanly avenged. There was nothing that made the palace master and the core executives happier than this. As for these things that were distributed, it was completely an extra surprise. Another pleasant surprise was that everyone realized that after the heaven and earth limitless origin suppressing formation stopped operating, the spiritual power in the world began to slowly return to normal. It was not forcefully plundered to Taishamen. This allowed everyone's hearts to calm down. As long as they could return to normal, everything would be fine. Naturally, the heaven and earth limitless original suppressing formation was also found in the Sutras Depository by the disciples of the sect. This array diagram was the original one that Yang Chen had given him back then, and it did not have any special array eyes or anything like that. The formation experts of each sect studied it and combined it with the situation in Taishamen, and they understood the function of this formation. What bullsh****? It can't be stopped after it's activated. What misunderstanding! The explanation that the Taishamen gave to the representatives of the major sect in the past was pure bullsh****. According to the results of the research, the Taishamen just didn't want to stop. How could they not stop? This was another crime of the Taishamen. Not to mention the spiritual realm, even if they were in the celestial realm, the Black Heaven sect would not be able to reason with them. This kind of formation was definitely not something that people in the mortal world could study. Even if they went to the spiritual realm in the future, they would still have a score to settle with the Black Heaven sect. With this, the major sects would be able to hold their heads up even straighter. After everyone stayed at the mountain gate of Teshimon for a few months, the experts of each sect began to return one after another. They went back to their own homes to count their gains. Only the people of the four major Tao sect were left here. After dividing up the territory of Teshimon, they would naturally establish their own branches and assign people. It should be known that the Teshimon had always occupied the most abundant spiritual veins and the most suitable treasured land for cultivation. Even if it was divided equally among the four sects, it was still an unexpected surprise for the four major sects. The insufferably arrogant Teshimon fell just like that. The scattered disciples were hunted down like crazy, just like how Yang Chen was hunted in his previous life. The difference was that these Teshimon disciples had no place to hide no matter where they went. Unlike Yang Chen, who could at least escape to a place where the Teshimon couldn't reach and continue to cultivate. Could be said that this event in the greatest heaven sect could definitely be said to be the biggest event in the world of cultivators in the past 10,000 years. The impact of this matter was not something that could be completely eliminated in 1,000 years. Perhaps it would take around 10,000 years before it would truly cease to exist. All the cultivators were intentionally or unintentionally looking for the whereabouts of the Teshimon. Everyone knew that it was impossible for such a big sect like the Teshimon to not have a backup plan. Once they found a secret place to recuperate, they would slowly grow in the future and become a huge threat to all the other sects. No one was willing to bear the revenge of the Teshimon in the dark, and no one was willing to face it. To the surprise of all the major sect, only a dozen of the great elders of the Teshimon appeared. The rest of them were nowhere to be seen. Logically speaking, the existence of these great elders was to protect the continuation of the sect. Why did they not appear when the Teshimon were in a situation where the entire sect was destroyed? For the major sect, these great elders were the hidden dangers that made them unable to eat and sleep in peace. If they did not find the whereabouts of these great elders, no one could sleep in peace. Fortunately, under the inspection of all parties, a few months later, when someone was tracking a core disciple of the greatest heaven sect, they followed the disciple to discover the original hidden valley, and at the same time, they found traces of a master's recent tribulation. There were also traces of a large amount of spiritual power gathering there. The great elders who came to investigate carefully finally came to a conclusion. The great elders of the Teshimon seemed to have absorbed too much spiritual power and could not suppress it. In the end, they had no choice but to cross the heavenly tribulation and ascend. Logically speaking, such a situation should not have occurred with the demon sealing formation. However, since there were people in the Teshimon who opened the demon sealing formation to trigger the heavenly tribulation, this place might have been opened at the same time. This could also explain why the great elders did not appear in the Teshimon. From the mouth of the core disciple of the Teshimon, a group of great elders learned where this place was originally. After confirming the traces of ascension, they finally let out a long sigh of relief. The supreme elders, who posed the greatest threat, had all been forced to ascend. This was something that even the heavens could not stand and watch. They could not stand the perverse actions of the Teshimon. However, no one knew which loyal disciple of the sect had opened the demon-sealing formation of the Teshimon. He was willing to make such a sacrifice and help all the cultivators in the world. No one knew that the reserve force of tens of thousands of people in the Teshimon, including sect Master Li and the elders, had been wiped out by Yang Chen. The tens of thousands of people who were alive now were all in a coma and did not know what had happened. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had returned to Chunyang Palace, but Yang Chen had taken these people to a place that no one knew. Chapter 1436. Present, only Yang Chen knew about this place. Even if it was the target he was waiting for, he would not know that he would pass through here. This wasn't some deep mountain forest, nor was it some secluded valley or mountain peak. It was simply a very obvious path. It was not an official road, but there were a lot of people walking on it. With more people walking on it, over time, it formed an obvious road. It was not spacious, but it was smooth to walk on. Yang Chen built a few rooms in a wide place on this road, which served as a small inn. It was said to be an inn, but even the owner and the waiter, there was only Yang Chen. Anyway, the people passing by on the road were not particularly frequent. There would be 1 or 2 in 10 days or half a month. Yang Chen was completely busy. No one knew that the famous 5th-grade alchemist master in the cultivation world, the master of the Deshang stage, Yang Chen, would start this kind of small business in such a remote corner. Only Yang Chen knew that he was waiting for a person. Although he did not know when that person would pass by here, he was sure that it would be in the next 10 years. Tian, who was confused, had no idea how he appeared in this ghost place. Anyway, when he woke up from his coma, he found himself here. Originally, Tian planned to join the army, and it was on the way to join the army that he passed out. Of course, Tian joined the army not to serve the king or anything like that, but he had his own plans. Tian was born in a family of demonic path cultivators, and he was also a direct descendant of the family. However, ever since he was young, Tian had never practiced any cultivation technique. It was not that he did not have the talent for cultivation, but his grandfather did not let him cultivate. Hundreds of years ago, the theory of acquired spiritual roots appeared in the cultivation world, and it was said that it was proposed by Master Yang Chen. Subsequently, Master Yang put forward a series of theories about acquired spiritual roots, including how to improve some of the spiritual objects with acquired spiritual roots, and so on. After the emergence of acquired spiritual roots, the current head of the Yi family, Tian's grandfather, began to conduct in-depth research according to the theories of Master Yang. The Yi family came from the demonic path, so they did not care about rules and regulations when it came to research. Whatever method they thought of, they would experiment it. Under this kind of unrestrained and unceremonious research, the Yi family's patriarch did come up with a rather heinous method that could be used to improve acquired spirit roots. Spirit items that could improve one's acquired spirit root were hard to come by. From the start, the Yi family's patriarch never expected his descendants to have such heaven-defying luck. Therefore, what he researched was a cultivation technique that absorbed the life essence of others. The research of the cultivation method was successful, but there was a fatal flaw. This kind of cultivation method could only be cultivated by people before they started cultivating. Only then could it achieve the goal of improving the postnatal spiritual root. Once he started cultivating, he would never be able to succeed. For cultivation clans, it was not a big deal to abduct a large number of mortals so that their disciples could improve their acquired spiritual root. Why would the Yi family, who came from the demonic path, care about the lives of mere mortals? The fatal thing was that the news of the Yi family's patriarch researching this demonic cultivation method was somehow leaked by a concubine disciple of the family. This kind of demonic cultivation method required the slaughter of tens of thousands of cultivators or hundreds of thousands of mortals to help one disciple. In order to avoid attracting attention, not every disciple had the right to use it. Thus, a certain branch family member who was born of a concubine secretly leaked the news of the cultivation method that the clan head had researched out when he had no hope of cultivating. The Yi family was only a small demonic path family, not even a third-rate sect. Soon, the Yi family was surrounded by demonic path experts who received the news. Of course, the patriarch was unwilling to hand over the cultivation method, so the Yi family was easily annihilated. Of the entire Yi family, only Tian managed to escape. This was an escape route that the Yi family's patriarch had planned ahead of time. Tian memorized the cultivation method passed down by the patriarch and embarked on the difficult path of cultivation alone. To cultivate, one must first kill. If he started a massacre in a certain place, it would be easy for the news to leak, and Tian could not do it alone. Therefore, he decided to join the army and take the opportunity to cultivate in the army. On his way to join the army, he inexplicably fainted while resting in a roadside inn. When he woke up, he found himself in this strange place. Yang Chen had been waiting for Tian here. Before he died in his previous life, he had chatted with Old Demon E for a period of time. Old Demon E told him many things, including the demonic cultivation method that Old Demon E used to cultivate and some things that happened when he first started cultivating. Among them was the path that he passed by. Yang Chen had been waiting here for almost 7 years. Finally, the young Old Demon E appeared. Tian's appearance did not change much from the Old Demon E of his previous life, so Yang Chen recognized him at a glance. In this life, Yang Chen relied on the demonic arts taught to him by Old Demon E to be able to have a full yin and yang 5 elements spirit root. In any case, this was Yang Chen's favor to Old Demon E. Yang Chen had always been thinking about how to end this karma with Old Demon E. When he had tens of thousands of Taishaman disciples to kill, he naturally thought of Old Demon E. Calculating the time, it just so happened that this was the day that Tian would be born. Therefore, Yang Chen did not hesitate to bring the tens of thousands of Taishaman disciples here to wait for Tian. In his previous life, Tian was notorious for his massacres in the army. Before he even started cultivating, he was regarded as a demon and was almost killed several times. The path of cultivation was also bumpy. Coupled with the fact that his entire family was wiped out, Old Demon E developed his surly personality in the future and became the Old Demon E that everyone feared. Yang Chen did not intend to change Old Demon Yi's personality. He just wanted to return the favor of Old Demon E for telling him the cultivation method. These tens of thousands of Taishaman disciples must die. Since they were going to die, why not fulfill Old Demon Yi's wish? On one hand, Yang Chen did not have to do it himself. On the other hand, he could fulfill the karma between Yang Chen and Old Demon E. By making Old Demon E a little more dangerous at the beginning, it could be considered as the interest that Yang Chen gave to Old Demon E. When Tian woke up, he found himself in a strange space. Apart from a few thatched cottages and some household items, the rest of the place was empty. While he was in shock, hundreds of figures suddenly appeared in the open space in front of him. Strangely, these people were all lying on the ground motionlessly. If it was not for the fact that their chests were moving and breathing, Tian might have thought that they were all dead. "Kill them and you can leave." A clear voice sounded in Tian's ears. Chapter 1437. The voice was so abrupt that Tian jumped in fright. However, he was still the all-powerful Old Demon E in the future. Tian quickly calmed down and began to ponder. Kill someone? Tian had never been afraid. He was here to kill someone, so why would he be afraid? What Tian was afraid of was his secret being found out. That would be a fatal disaster. The voice only said one sentence and did not appear again. Tian pondered for a long time but could not find any malicious intent from the owner of the voice. It would not take much effort to kill him. His only concern was whether this person was secretly coveting the E family's newly developed cultivation method. However, how could an outsider learn such a demonic cultivation method just by looking at it? The E family's patriarch had researched it for so many years and did not leave any opportunities for outsiders to exploit. Even when cultivating this demonic cultivation method, outsiders would not be able to see any abnormalities. After understanding this, Tian no longer tried to find out what the owner of the voice meant. Instead, he looked at the figures that suddenly appeared. Soon, Tian realized that they were all cultivators. Tian had never cultivated before, but that did not mean he could not see certain things. These cultivators clearly had a strong foundation, but for some reason, they were all unconscious on the ground. They did not have anything on them that could prove their identity, nor did they leave behind any Dharma treasures or Qiankuan bags. They were just lying there unconscious. While he was investigating, Etion suddenly realized that one of the cultivators seemed to be waking up, which gave him a huge fright. Now, Etion was a mortal who had never cultivated any cultivation methods. Once this person woke up, Etion could even use his buttocks to think that he would definitely not have a good ending. In a moment of panic, he looked around and suddenly found a sharp knife not far from where he was lying. Without thinking, Etion ran over, picked up the knife, and sprinted to the side of the person who was moving. Being called Old Demon by the later generations, Etion did not have any psychological pressure when it came to killing people. He had originally planned to join the army to kill people. Now that there was a ready-made expert for him to kill, he could not think of any reason to refuse. With a single slash, blood spurted out. The expert, who seemed like he was about to wake up, only twitched a few times before turning into a corpse. Without another word, Etion began to cultivate the cultivation method in his mind. After a few breaths, Etion immediately felt a warm current flowing into his body from the corpse in front of him. After completing one cycle according to the set of cultivation method, Etion immediately cast his gaze on the other guy beside him. After killing more than 100 people in a row, Etion felt exhausted. However, he was still afraid that the remaining dozens of people would make a move. Dragging his exhausted body, he killed all the remaining people before walking back to the thatched cottage. He started a fire to cook and then rested. By the time Etion woke up, the 200 people he had killed were nowhere to be found. Etion heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to look around, his vision blurred, and more than 200 figures appeared in front of him again. They were still in the same open space, and everyone was still unconscious. The ground was covered in blood. If one person woke up, Etion knew what would happen to him. Therefore, Etion had to pick up the sharp knife and began to repeat yesterday's process. Kill, practice, kill again, practice again, and the cycle began again. In the following days, Etion did not distinguish between day and night. He only knew to kill people mechanically and then rest. The only extra thing was to sharpen the knife. After killing so many people, the sharp knife had become a little blunt. If he did not sharpen it, he would not feel happy killing people. When he killed more than 1,000 people, Etion found that his body had begun to become stronger. Absorbing the life essence not only brought about the improvement of the acquired spirit root, but also the strength of the body itself. The result of the strength of the body was that the number of people he had to kill every day increased from more than 200 to more than 300, and then more and more. Etion did not have any resistance to this, and still continued to mechanically kill and cultivate. Etion counted every day, and after a few dozen days, he had killed more than 10,000 cultivators. By now, how could he not understand that these people were deliberately killed by the owner of the mysterious voice, and it must be to help him? Unfortunately, no matter how Etion acted or shouted, no one responded to him. The owner of the voice seemed to have no intention of communicating with him, and just kept providing cultivators for him to kill. In the past, most of the people he killed were in the foundation establishment stage. Etion had this eyesight and could also detect it, but in the past few days, he had discovered that there were already masters in the golden core stage. Who was the mysterious man, what kind of strength did he have, and how could he get so many cultivation masters for him to kill every day? Puzzled, Etion simply let go completely. Anyway, if the mysterious man wanted to kill, he would have done it long ago. There was no need to be so long-winded. After letting go of everything, there was no longer anything to worry about, and Etion's killing became more and more unrestrained. The cultivation method passed down by the ancestor allowed him to clearly sense the changes in his body. Although Etion always had the 5-colored stone on him, Etion never dared to take it out and try to measure his acquired spirit root, for fear that the mysterious man would see through it. Amidst this vigilant and wanton slaughter, Etion counted the number of cultivators killed to be close to 50,000. What frightened him most was that the more he killed, the more masters he killed. At first, he was only in the Foundation establishment stage, then there was a Jedon stage master, and now, he has killed dozens of Yuanying stage ancestors. He really didn't know if there would be masters in the Deshang stage for him to kill. He didn't know how much time had passed. Tian didn't know what the situation outside was now, only that he had killed all the Yuanying stage ancestors. He didn't know how many times he had sharpened the wrist knife. The physical body of the Yuanying stage ancestors was so strong, even in a coma, it was not so easy to kill them. On this day, Tian finally managed to kill the last unconscious expert with much difficulty. Now the masters killed each time were getting fewer and fewer, there were only 20 or 30, but the time taken was almost the same as before. He really didn't know when it would end. Tian was planning to return to the hut to rest, but the voice that hadn't appeared for a long time sounded again, "Take care of yourself." Before Tian could understand what was going on, in a flash, Tian had appeared in another place that was once familiar to him. What hut, what master's body, all disappeared without a trace in front of him. Chapter 1438. The place where Tian appeared was the inn where he had inexplicably entered that place before. However, in the inn now, except for Tian himself, there was no one else. Looking around blankly, Tian couldn't believe whether his previous experience was real or a dream, but one thing was certain, that was, his current physical body had reached a staggering level. After absorbing the life essence of 50,000 cultivators, there was no way that it would be useless. After all, he was the old demon of the later generations. He was only confused for a while, and quickly determined the situation in front of him. Without saying anything, Tian turned around and left the place immediately. When he arrived at the secret place, Tian took out the 5-colored stone and began to measure his acquired spirit root. Soon, a smile appeared on Tian's face. The acquired fire spirit root was maxed out, and even several other attributes of the spirit root had been greatly improved. Although it did not reach the point of maxed out, it was enough to meet the requirements of several other cultivation methods. Without anyone tracking him, Tian was completely ecstatic. Originally, he thought that it would take more than 10 years or even decades to improve his spirit root, but now it was completely unnecessary. He could start cultivating right away, and then find the enemies who destroyed his family and sect to take revenge. Watching Tian leave, Yang Chen's figure never appeared again from beginning to end. The 50,000 Taishaman disciples had been beheaded by Tian, and their bones had become fertilizer for the flower garden of the pure bottle medicine garden. In a few decades there would be no trace left. At this point, the last remaining reserve force of the Taishaman had been completely destroyed by Yang Chen, and there was no trace left. Tian and Yang Chen only had a friendship before his death in his previous life. This time, Yang Chen sent him 50,000 cultivators to kill, and he had already repaid all the kindness. As for how Tian would develop in the future, whether he would become the old demon that everyone in the immortal world would fear, it had nothing to do with Yang Chen. There was no more karma between the two. It had been 8 years since Yang Chen left alone, and it was time to rush back to Chunyang Palace to continue his own cultivation. When Tian went far away, Yang Chen did not pay attention to his whereabouts. He directly launched the shuttle and flew quickly to Chunyang Palace. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had returned to Chunyang Palace first, but the two women had been very tight-lipped. They did not tell anyone where their family of 3 went when they besieged the Taishaman. All the good things they had obtained, including the storage space left by the Taishaman, had been collected by Gong Sunling's geographical map of the mountains and rivers. The things inside were also secretly preserved by the two of them, without revealing any clues. Without the overt and covert suppression of Taishaman, Chunyang Palace really ushered in the golden age of development. The spiritual power affected by the Heaven and Earth Wuji Spirit Suppression Formation had completely returned to normal a year after the incident. all the disciples of Chunyang Palace began to immerse themselves in cultivation. It seemed that they did not want to participate in the aftermath of the Taishaman's extermination. During the years when Yang Chen was away, the cultivation world directly set off a crazy pursuit against the remnants of the Taishaman and those who had originally surrendered to the Taishaman. When the Taishaman's sect was exterminated, the disciples of the Taishaman who were not in Taishaman became the public enemy of the cultivators. Even the craziest devil who chased after them in the past did not seem to have such vigor now. After all, the pursuit of the devil was just a matter of Taoism to eliminate the devil and defend the Tao. But now, the remnants of the Taishaman, regardless of the Taoist devil or demon, were the targets of everyone's pursuit. The small sect that used to rely on the Taishaman were also crazily retaliated against, and extermination happened almost every day. The smart ones immediately changed their sects and turned to other big sects. Those who were usually arrogant were uprooted. Only some of the spies who had invested in the name of the Taishaman but had never made it public, nor had they shown any connection with the Taishaman. However, these people could not make any waves now, and they even dared not say that they had anything to do with the Taishaman. Some secret sect even directly obliterated a group of people who were in contact with the Taishaman, completely eliminating the evidence related to the Taishaman. It was rare that the Taoist devil and demon did not attack each other. They all restrained their own disciples with a sense of propriety, and tacitly developed wantonly. The cultivation world ushered in the most slaughtered but also the most peaceful period. Naturally, the target of the slaughter was the remnants of the Taishaman, and the peace was all the other cultivators. Chunyang Palace in this tide did not show the mountain and did not expose the water, and even the benefits obtained were very ordinary. However, the high-level members of Chunyang Palace did not have the slightest dissatisfaction. On the contrary, after the destruction of the Taishaman, the high-level core members had a collective celebration of drinking. Even the always cautious master of the palace was rarely unrestrained and drunk. The return of Yang Chen also did not cause any waves. After visiting the head of the palace and the elders, the high-level members no longer gave any instructions to Yang Chen. What he wanted to do was arranged by Yang Chen himself, and they never interfered. As for the absence of Yang Chen and Gao Yugong Sunling during the siege of the Taishaman, no one asked about it. Only when the head of the palace received Yang Chen's greeting, the corner of his eyes picked up, and it seemed to show a little inquiry. Yang Chen nodded secretly, and the two tacitly did not say anything. However, on that day, the head of the palace and the core high-level members found a reason to get drunk and seemed very happy. Speaking of it, this time the change of the Taishaman, the head of the palace also indirectly got some benefit. At least the missing elder Wan Qianwan of the Blue Cloud sect had been attributed to the young master of the Taishaman, Li Liheng, who let Wan Qianwan also belong to the category of beautiful female cultivators with high cultivation base. She also directly became a victim of the Devil Heart Sutra. The female cultivators who disappeared during that time were far more than those found in Taishaman. At least twice the number. They lost their lives in the previous abduction or later after Li Liheng played with them. Because of the existence of the Demon Seal formation, the Life Source Spirit card could not be found, so Wan Qianwan's Life Source Spirit card had been destroyed in the sect. In the future, there would be no Wan Qianwan in this world, and no one would track down the whereabouts of Elder Wan Qianwan. The beautiful Desheng stage Dao companion of the head of the palace became a disciple of the Chunyang Palace. Anyway, everything about her was under the command of the head of the palace, and there would be no future troubles. Of course, from the beginning to the end, the head of the palace did not know the true identity of Wan Qianwan, and never regarded her as any trouble. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling saw their husband return, and they were smart not to ask Yang Chen a word. They only knew one thing. After their husband's trip, the 50,000 disciples of the Taishaman sect never appeared again. It was enough to know this. Chapter 1439. Tian killed 50,000 Taishaman disciples, but there was one person he had never had the chance to see. That person was the former young sect master of Taishaman, Li Liheng. Although Li Liheng was turned into a waste by Yang Lan, sect master Li did not know at the time. For so many years and so many generations, only Li Liheng had successfully practiced the spatial spiritual cultivation method. Even if Li Liheng made a big mistake and even led to the destruction of the Taishaman, sect master Li was still lucky enough to think that one day Li Liheng could recover and continue to practice the spatial spiritual cultivation method and contact with the predecessors in the spiritual world. With the guidance of the predecessors, it was not known how many detours could be avoided in cultivation. Sect master Li had already tasted the sweetness of the previous things. Even if Li Liheng had a criminal record, he would at most be kept by his side at all times in the future, but many times Li Liheng still needed to communicate with the predecessors in the spiritual world. In the heart of sect master Li of Taishaman, there has always been a small plan. He was forced to make a hard oath. If he obeyed the oath, he would end up in ashes. As the sect master of Taishaman for such a long time, he was high and mighty, and his words were the law. How could he tolerate himself turning into ashes when he crossed the tribulation in the future? Sect master Li was not a person who would sit and wait for death. He needed Li Liheng to help him get the method to break the heart oath from the predecessors in the spiritual world. He did not see the ascension of Yang Lan and Yang Lan with his own eyes. He was not sure if the special formation I would work, but there must be a method similar to Mu Mingyuan's ascension in the past. Based on this, sect master Li took the unconscious Li Liheng, and then Li Liheng fell into the hands of Yang Chen. This guy was a prelude to the tragedy of Yang Chen's previous life. Although Yang Lan was behind the scenes, Li Liheng was the direct person who came forward that year. After knowing that Yang Lan and Yang Lan had ascended, Yang Chen even thought about leaving Li Liheng's life, and even let him ascend as well. After arriving in the spiritual world, let Li Liheng deal with Yang Lan and Yang Lan. It was also a good thing to let the enemies bite each other. However, after some in-depth thinking, Yang Chen gave up this plan. If Li Liheng ascended, it would definitely lead to the misunderstanding of the spatial spiritual cultivation method. For the time being, it was better not to be exposed. Moreover, Li Liheng's cultivation had been completely destroyed. To treat him to the point where he could ascend, it would cost enough resources to let dozens of normal cultivators ascend. To waste this kind of resources on an enemy that might expose his own arrangements, Yang Chen was not extravagant to this point. In the end, Yang Chen personally killed Li Liheng. He had completely severed the enmity between him and Li Liheng. It could be said that in the mortal world, there was now no real enemy of Yang Chen. Perhaps those who helped the tyrant in the past and took refuge in the greatest heaven sect could barely be counted, but that was only an indirect enemy. Chen 2222 Yang. Lido. 222 Tian 222 Tian. Tian. And you. Li Tutu, He Gao, Ido to Tian Tian to Lido. To you to Tian E. After meeting with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, it was naturally another round of love. After returning from the Languel, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had been in fear since they knew that Yang Chen's enemies were Taishaman. However, what the two women did not expect was that in the next few years, the situation suddenly changed. The Taoist leader, who was high and mighty, suddenly became the public enemy of the whole world. He was attacked by a group of people, and finally, his sect was destroyed. Looking back at all this, the two women only felt that everything in the past was like a dream. They knew that it was related to their husband, but they didn't understand how Yang Chen arranged it. How did he make the Taishaman the public enemy? Although they didn't understand, the two women didn't want to ask. Since Yang Chen was fighting against the Taishaman for Gao Yu, nothing else needed to be said. Just this thought was enough to make Gao Yu completely loyal. Gong Sunling was no exception. Sharing a secret with her husband would only make her feel more and more sweet. The two women didn't deal with the good things they got from the Taishanmen at all. They had been waiting for Yang Chen to come back and make a decision. There were too many things. Even the two women, who were used to Yang Chen's extravagance and wealth, were completely shocked. If so many things appeared in the world, it would definitely make countless cultivators crazy. How to deal with such a large amount of wealth was also a matter that needed to be cautious. If they were not careful, they would get into trouble. The two women also understood this truth, so they didn't touch these things. They kept them untouched and waited for their husband to deal with them. In the geographical map of mountains and rivers, there was a place that only Yang Chen, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling could reach. The things of the Taishanmen were kept here. Not only the resources, but also the ancient books and countless spiritual liquids kept by the Taishanmen were all here. These things can't see the light of day. Keep them all for your own use. Yang Chen waved his hand and directly fixed the value of this batch of valuable things. In the future, you will use these materials to practice. What the masters in the geographical map of mountains and rivers need, we will also use these things to satisfy them. Only Yang Chen and the two women knew about this batch of things. The others who knew about it were dead. This ownerless thing could be said to be a real bargain for Yang Chen's family. Now Yang Chen had exchanged good things for Wanbao Tower and a large number of medicinal pills. After a long time, it would not be surprising if Yang Chen had something better in his hands. At that time, these things would quietly become Yang Chen's things, and Yang Chen would have the final say on whether to use them or sell them. In the next period of time, we should avoid arousing suspicion and stay in the sect to cultivate honestly. After Yang Chen sneaked out, he did not intend to give others the impression that his whereabouts were uncertain. It had only been a few years since he came out of the Langyu well, so it was not abrupt to stay in the sect to cultivate. The pure bottle medicine garden was thrown into the spiritual liquid lake by Yang Chen together with the dragon gourd. The fusion of the two magic weapons required a lot of spiritual power. Yang Chen did not want to waste those spiritual liquids. These spiritual liquids that the Taishanmen had accumulated for many years became the best consumables, enough for a Zhu and a Bai to use. I will filter these ancient books first. If it is worth it for you to see, you can take a look. Hundreds of millions of jade slips were stored here. This was the collection of the Taishanmen. For Yang Chen, it was just a good thing to make up for his lack of knowledge. These ancient books were all-encompassing and had everything. There were all kinds of refining, alchemy, and formations. The cultivation methods were even more strange. Yang Chen only had a fire attribute spiritual root in his previous life. He had a far-sighted vision in fire attribute cultivation, but he was much worse in other aspects. Although these things were not necessarily as simple and pure as the original cultivation methods, the stones of other mountains could be used to improve jade, and it just happened to give him enough reference. Chapter 1440. Yang Chen himself was okay. He knew what he lacked. However, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling obviously did not have the same realm as him now. In his previous life, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling died in the mortal world. Such a situation would certainly not happen in this life, but even Yang Chen did not know their future height. If he wanted to be with the two women for a lifetime, he must let them have the capital to settle down. Gao Yu had the water and fire dragon horn flying sword, the two flying sword, the Emperor's aura, and the original cultivation method. Basically, she was already firmly standing in the ranks of the masters. Not to mention that Gao Yu herself was a very good master of refining. In recent years, Gao Yu's reputation in refining has also spread out. In terms of refining, she almost had a reputation that was no less than that of Yang Chen in the alchemy world. The magic weapon she took out was a treasure that almost everyone fought for. There was no aura of the refiner, which was enough to make her stand at the peak of the refining world. Gong Sunling had the mountain river geographical map, the original cultivation method, and was also a formation master. After the mountain river geographical map absorbed the space of Languel, the virtual and real alternated. This alone was enough to make Gong Sunling able to protect herself even in the face of a master who was a realm higher than her without worrying about any danger. This was not counting the hundreds of Deshang stage masters in the Mountain River geographical map. It must be known that the masters in the Mountain River geographical map could also cultivate and improve, but they lived in another illusory world. This group of masters could even follow Gong Sunling to cross the tribulation and ascend. Hundreds of masters who were almost the same realm as Gong Sunling as helpers, Yang Chen couldn't think of anyone who could beat Gong Sunling in the same realm. The two women were now so excellent, but in the eyes of Yang Chen, there were still some fatal weaknesses, that was, their vision. Although they had seen a lot of good things with Yang Chen, they had focused on cultivation under the guidance of Yang Chen before, and some aspects were still lacking. To put it simply, what was the breadth of one's knowledge? Yang Chen could responsibly say that there was basically no good thing in the mortal world that the two women had not seen. What they lacked was a macroscopic understanding of the entire cultivation world. There were some things that couldn't be sensed before reaching the spiritual realm or immortal realm. This was how one's horizons were. Barring any mishaps, the two women would spend hundreds of years in the spirit realm to make up for what they lacked in the mortal world. But now that they had Yang Chen and the Taishaman's ancient books, it could be said that they no longer needed to take detours. The ancient records of the Taishaman were so comprehensive that Yang Chen couldn't find anything that wasn't included. These things and the ancient classics obtained by Yang Chen in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortals Cave, and then combined with those obtained by the Zhao family manor, it can almost be said to have the most complete database in the mortal world. What Yang Chen had to do was to filter the information himself, and then pick out the useful things for the two women, so that they could dabble in all aspects. This was the simplest way to increase their insight and knowledge. Of course, the knowledge on paper was always shallow. If you want to know this matter, you have to do it. The real and thorough understanding still has to be done in practice in the future. But after all, it was better to have knowledge on paper than to explore in practice. Why did the disciples of the big sect have an advantage? It was because of this reason. Now that Yang Chen has more resources in his hands than all the sect, it is natural to let Gao Yu Gong Sunling have the same advantage in this respect. In fact, in addition to Gao Yu Gong Sunling, Yang Chen's other wives and concubines were not easy to deal with. Their cultivation aptitudes were all unique, and the cultivation methods they practiced were also the most outstanding cultivation methods of their respective sections. However, none of them could accurately predict how their future cultivation would be like. Although Yang Chen, who had the memory of his previous life, knew their future achievements, he also changed some things in this life because of his own reasons. Tao Junki ascended at least 300 years earlier than in his previous life. The defects of the Murong sisters' life source magic weapon have been completely made up by Yang Chen. Shi Wushuang also reached the Deshang stage 100 years earlier than in his previous life. According to this trend, the tribulation and ascension could also be advanced by hundreds of years. Needless to say, Lady Fanghua of Yin Yang Demon School, in her previous life, she did not have great accomplishment in the spiritual world, but in this life she had already reached great accomplishment when she was in the Yuanying stage, and it was an alternative great accomplishment. Her future achievements could not be estimated. The biggest changes were Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. With the supreme pure yang sword qi and the original cultivation method left by Ancestor Lu, Shi Shanshan's cultivation direction has been corrected to the extreme. Coupled with the experience of the demon continent, it saved at least hundreds of years of adaptation in the spiritual world. In the future, her achievements would definitely be more than the Plum Fairy in her previous life. Sun Qingxue, on the other hand, did not have to abolish her cultivation base and start over again. She did not lose her original cultivation. With the body of the ultimate demonized demonic vine and the guidance of Elder Hua wanting, the reputation of snow-dancing fairy in the future would not be inferior to that of Shi Shanshan. They were all his own women. Although Yang Chun still had some closeness for the time being, he would definitely treat them equally as they lived together for a long time in the future. Now Yang Chun has not yet passed on the original cultivation method to the 7 concubines, but he has already planned to pass on their corresponding cultivation methods after arriving in the spiritual world. Now it was nothing more than not wanting their respective sect to take advantage of it. These large number of ancient books were useful to everyone, especially after Yang Chen's careful selection, according to each person's characteristics. Yang Chen would pick out a batch of suitable ancient books for them to read. With Yang Chen's vision and insight, these things could at least make them spend hundreds of years less in the future to make up for it. Cultivating for a long time did not mean that there was no need to be afraid of wasting time in cultivation. Since he could take less detours, Yang Chen didn't mind saving some time for his women and the people around him. In the realm of the Deshang stage, in addition to concentrating on cultivation to improve the cultivation base, the rest was the tempering of the mind. He believed that, after the Taishanmen incident, the mood of the women would not be bad. What they lacked was knowledge in all aspects and the opportunity to learn by analogy. Yang Chun has decided that after he selected suitable ancient books for the women would continue to read and gain knowledge for a long time. Speaking of which, the Taishanmen had already perished, and there were no enemies in the mortal world that Yang Chun needed to deal with. The next time was the process of Yang Chen's continuous accumulation of strength, and at the same time, he had to be ready to face the profound heaven sect. Yang Chun believed that at least for hundreds of years, if there was no accident, he would not have any opportunities worth making a move. However, before ascending, Yang Chun still had a lot of things to do. If you count it carefully, cultivation, alchemy, absorbing the fire seed, refining the entrance to the immortal executioner stage, and reading these ancient books, it seemed that each of them took a lot of time for Yang Chun. Chapter 1441. Fortunately, Yang Chen's current spiritual awareness cultivation base has reached the first grade of the Earth Immortal Realm, and the 3 Purities secret art has been cultivated to the 4th layer. Multitasking was a piece of cake. Many things could be carried out at the same time and did not interfere with each other. At least the matter of absorbing fire seeds, Yang Chun has never stopped. When waiting to leave in the Languel, when waiting for Etion in the small shop, Yang Chun has been constantly absorbing fire seeds. Yang Chun has basically absorbed the 5th grade fire seeds, and now he is absorbing all the 6th grade fire seeds. There were a lot of 6th grade fire seeds on hand, each of which took Yang Chun almost 7 or 8 years to absorb and integrate into the yin-yang heaven burning fire. Even if Yang Chun was now a master of the Deshang stage, but at the level of the 6th grade fire seeds, every kind needed to be careful and no mistakes could be made. Otherwise, so many years of hard work would be ruined. That was, Yang Chun dared to absorb fire seeds anytime and anywhere when he was doing other things. Replaced by anyone, even if it was a master of the ascending level like Tao Junkie, they would not necessarily dare to be so arrogant. Refining the entrance to the immortal beheading stage was even more difficult. Yang Chen was not sure if he could complete this before he ascended. The magic weapon that the Grand Supreme Old Lord refined across the 3 realms was by no means something that Yang Chen, a mere Deshang stage master, could refine within a few hundred years. However, there was no absolute thing in the world. If Yang Chen had not obtained the merit and virtue, he would never have dared to hope that one day he would be able to refine the immortal beheading stage. But now it was different, with the merit and virtue, that transcended the immeasurable. It seemed that refining the immortal beheading stage was not impossible. At least now he could refine the entrance first, and if he had the opportunity in the future, he could further refine it. This process would last at least hundreds of years, and Yang Chen was not in a hurry. He just refined it step by step. In any case, it wouldn't hinder him from doing other things even if he diverted part of his attention to focus on this matter. This was just a matter of painstaking work. He would refine it every day. Sorting out the ancient books was an even more arduous task. Fortunately, these ancient books were all recorded on jade slip. If one wanted to read the contents, he only needed to use his divine sense to probe, which was many times faster than the books themselves. With Yang Chen's current spiritual consciousness cultivation, it would not take long for him to explore and quickly read the contents of a piece of jade strip. He could even read several pieces of jade strips at the same time. For Yang Chen, the process of reading the jade slips was almost another form of cultivation. Yang Chen had to read through every jade slip carefully and ponder over its content. Reading a few pieces at the same time, one after another, he had to review the content, he had to think about whether it was right or wrong. At the same time, he also had to compare it with some things in his memory, and he did not forget to copy a piece of jade strip in his hand. This series of things almost gave Yang Chen no time to rest his brain. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had always been by Yang Chen's side. Whenever Yang Chen found a suitable ancient book for them, he would give it to them to read. The two women also stayed by their husband's side without any distractions, and followed their husband into this kind of secluded reading. In addition to cultivation, the three of them spent the rest of the time reading. Yang Chen did not require the two women to remember these things, but after reading them, they would at least have an impression. Whether it was cultivation methods, pill recipes, refining techniques, or arrays, there were many things in common. Mastering one method would lead to mastering all method. It was not just some people who said it out of boredom. The two women had never thought that just a simple reading could make them feel enlightened all of a sudden. Most of the time, they only read miscellaneous books or ancient books that had nothing to do with their cultivation or hobbies. However, some of the things in the books would always make them think of their specialization, as if it was another kind of hint. Many things that they could not understand or were puzzled about before seemed to have thought of other possibilities or uncovered the fog in front of them after this unique hint. This feeling of breaking the fog in their minds was really addictive and could not stop. Yang Chen's family of three read like this in seclusion for 50 years. For Yang Chen, it was rare to have this kind of mood to read the hundreds of millions of jade slips of several sects without distractions. Even if he could not get any benefits from these jade slips, the process of reading alone was a rare training for Yang Chen. The pure Yang Palace continued to develop, and in the past 50 years, nothing particularly big had happened. The other sects were also developing steadily, and there didn't seem to be any major disputes in the past few decades. No one was willing to be deprived of the spiritual power of the whole world again, so as long as one was a cultivator, he would stare at his surroundings to see if there were any remnants of Taishanmen. In the past 50 years, the remnants of Taishanmen that could be hunted down had almost been killed. Those that could not be found had also fled to the distant sea. It seemed that they would no longer cause too much impact. Basically, the Taishanmen's affairs had subsided. Soon, there were not only Gao Yu and Gong Sunling around Yang Chen. After returning to the sect and living for 50 years, Yang Chen's other wives and concubines also came to Chunyang Palace one after another and returned to Yang Chen's side. Yang Chen had already prepared the classics that were suitable for their respective characteristics for the women. The number of people reading increased from 3 to 11. It could be said that Yang Chen's family was immersed in reading and did not care about other things at all. Later, the women did not doubt the origin of these classics. All the jade slips selected by Yang Chen were copied by Yang Chen. The parts related to Taishanmen were removed from the contents, and there was no trace of Taishanmen. There were also many ancient books handed down in the Zhao family manner. All the women thought that they were obtained from the Zhao family. Although there were many such ancient books in their respective sect, they usually did not pay careful attention to them. It was impossible for anyone in the sect to guide the women in this regard, and the ones carefully selected by Yang Chen were suitable for their respective characteristics. After reading, all the women gained a lot. From the time Yang Chen began to read the jade slips to the time he read all the jade slips, it took a full 100 years. In the past 100 years, Yang Chen did nothing else. Whether it was the Zhao family manor, the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, or the ancient books of Taishimen, they were all read by Yang Chen. Yang Chen's mind was almost filled with all kinds of ancient books. Even if Yang Chen was strong, it was impossible to remember all the ancient books. Hundreds of millions of ancient books, Yang Chen was able to read them all, which was already a great achievement. Reading 10,000 books and traveling 10,000 miles, it seemed that next, he should go out and take a walk. Chapter 1442. If there were benefits, Yang Chen would definitely not forget the sect. So many ancient books had been sorted out. If only Yang Chen's family read them, they would not be able to maximize the benefit. Therefore, it was necessary to hand them over to the sect. In the hundreds of years since the Taishimen were exterminated, the world had been settled. The sect that had obtained the ancient books of the Taishimen had begun to relax the management of those ancient books. Relaxing did not mean that anyone was allowed to read them, but a kind of exchange atmosphere had been formed between the sect. Anyway, these books did not belong to their own sect. Everyone got them from the Taishimen. It was normal for them to make a copy and exchange it with others for something they needed. If ordinary cultivators wanted to read these ancient books and get cultivation methods, elixirs, and array diagrams, they had to exchange them with their respective sects' contribution points. The more advanced the ancient book, the greater the sect's contribution points needed, especially some advanced cultivation methods of the Taishimen. No matter which sect it was in, it would require a jaw-dropping number of contribution points to exchange for it. However, it was relatively simple between the sects. Except for the super sect that had obtained the complete collection, the other sects, regardless of whether they were demons or monsters, had obtained part of it. If people wanted to see the whole picture, they needed to exchange between the sects. The super sect turned a blind eye to this kind of exchange between the ordinary sect. They had everything they got from the Taishimen, so they would not take the initiative to stop this kind of exchange between the ordinary sect. They would even take the initiative to provide some advanced ancient books for the various sects to exchange in order to strengthen the relationship of interests between the sects. In the face of the Taishimen, the more widely these ancient books were distributed, the more people saw them, and the more powerless the Xiantian sect would be. They could not really be the enemy of all the cultivators, could they? After more than 100 years of exchange, except for the super sect that had really mastered a batch of core ancient books of the Taishimen, almost everything that each sect wanted had been exchanged from the other sect. At this time, if Yang Chen took out a batch of classics to enrich the Sutras depository of Chunyang Palace, it would not be so abrupt. Even so, when the head of the palace and the core elders saw Yang Chen take out this batch of classics that had been carefully selected by Yang Chen for more than 100 years, they still couldn't suppress their ecstasy, and several core executives almost jumped up and cheered. In terms of talent reserve, the pure Yang Palace belonged to the rising stars, and it was far worse than those old big sects. Especially in terms of inheritance, it is even more pitiful. Even with the classics of the Zhao family manor and Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, there are still most of the classics that can only be placed there, but there is no way for ordinary disciples to benefit. There were too few real masters in Chunyang Palace, especially those who were knowledgeable, who were even rarer. The previous limitations of the sect also limited the vision of the core executive. Even if Chunyang Palace later flourished, the accumulation in this regard was still far from enough that even the masters who reviewed these classics could not come out. Who dared to let their own disciples try out the classics that had not been examined by the masters. That was extremely irresponsible for their own disciples. Even if they knew that the things obtained by the Zhao family manor and Taishanmen were unlikely to have major problems, they did not dare to take risk. After the elders who were responsible for sorting out the classics reviewed them one by one, they would be opened to ordinary disciples. As for the inheritance of the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave, except for Yang Chen, no one could recognize the ancient characters, let alone pass it down. It was a pity that Yang Chen had been busy with all kinds of things in the past and did not focus on this aspect. Based on this reason, now Yang Chen suddenly took out such a large number of classics that had been carefully reviewed by Yang Chen to enrich the sect's sutra depository. How could it not make the core executives, including the head of the palace, overjoyed? According to Yang Chen's introduction, this batch of classics almost covered all aspects of the cultivation world. It had been sorted out by Yang Chen, and even limited the scope of reading according to the level of cultivation. It could be said that as long as this batch of classics entered the sect's sutra depository, the direction of cultivation that the disciples of the sect could choose could directly expand 100 times. What was the comprehensive strength of the sect? In addition to the combat effectiveness of the disciples, this orderly inheritance was also one of the indispensable measuring conditions. The reason why Chunyang Palace could only be a first-class sect and could not become a super sect was that the inheritance was not long enough and the foundation was not deep enough. With this batch of classics, after a long time, it was only a matter of time before Chunyang Palace became a super sect. This was not the most surprising thing. The classics given by Yang Chen were divided into 3 parts. One part could be read by ordinary disciples. This was open to all disciples, as long as they had enough contribution points, they could view it. The second part was for the core disciples, that is, the most loyal disciples of Chunyang Palace. That was the real core secret, which included the most core inheritance of the Taishanmen and the Zhao family. Except for those super big sect, other sect could not get it. This batch of core classics directly allowed the core disciples of Chunyang Palace to enjoy the treatment of the Taishanmen core disciples. In addition, there was no shortage of other resources in Chunyang Palace. The rapid growth of the core disciples was already a sure thing. The most surprising thing was the third part, which was a batch of classics that Yang Chen had specially selected for the characteristics of the head of the palace and the core elders. It was the most suitable for their current realm. The high-level members of Chunyang Palace, because of their insufficient qualifications, could not improve their cultivation greatly. They were trapped in the Yuanying realm and could not make any progress. Yang Chen spent a lot of effort to use the merit body refining pill to improve the postnatal spirit root of the core high-level members to the limit, making it possible for them to enter the future. However, in the past, Chunyang Palace was, after all, a small sect. Its scope of influence was limited, and its vision was limited. Until now, it did not have the bearing of a big sect. That was not something that could be cultivated in one generation. At least 3 generations of masters could really have the bearing of a big sect. Yang Chen would not pull up the seedlings to help them grow, but he would not let it go. These classics could make up for the shortcomings of their previous vision, so that their state of mind could really grow to the realm of overlooking all living beings. For the rise of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen would definitely spare no effort. Which elder would not like to care about his juniors like this? The core high-level members of Chunyang Palace were self-aware and knew their own shortcomings. They would never be looked down upon by Yang Chen because of Yang Chen. Everyone knew where everything in front of them came from. Yang Chen's filial piety, everyone was happy to accept it. The origin of these things will not cause any trouble, right? Out of caution, Wang Yong looked at the mountains of classics and asked carefully. Then he was afraid that Yang Chen would think too much, so he added, "If it is troublesome, you don't have to tell us." Chapter 1443. It's not troublesome. Yang Chen smiled and replied calmly, "These things are actually from several different sources." Yang Chen began to introduce, and the head of the palace and several core elders immediately sat up straight and listened very carefully, for fear that they would miss something. This disciple has collected scattered from all over the place over the years, as well as from the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave. These are no problem at all. Yang Chun pointed out a part of it. The Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave has been translated by the disciple, and some of the suitable ones have been selected. The rest can only be used for reference, and it is somewhat outdated. The Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave did not know how many years it has been idle, especially the words recorded in the jade slip that no one knows. These things would naturally not be a problem. There was no need to worry about what Yang Chun collected himself. It was all exchanged by Yang Chun with various medicinal pills. It was justifiable. Even if the Taishamen were not destroyed, they could not take Yang Chun's things to say. The batch obtained by the Zhao family manor may have some trouble in the future, but that is a matter after reaching the spiritual world and the immortal world. No one in the mortal world would dare to pursue it. Yang Chun continued. After listening to Yang Chun's words, everyone nodded. These things in the Zhao family manor were indeed a bit troublesome, but as Yang Chun said, it was a trouble in the future, and no one in the mortal world could pursue it. Moreover, these ancient books were purchased by the Tao, Demon, and Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Even if they reached the spiritual world, the Zhao family could not risk offending all the sect at the same time to pursue this matter. To put it bluntly, even the Taishamen were involved in this matter. Did the Zhao family really dare to go against the Profound Heaven sect? Therefore, in this part, everyone did not have to think too much about it. As for the last one, there are some small troubles. Yang Chun continued to say calmly. When they heard Yang Chun say that there were some small troubles, everyone frowned. The small troubles in Yang Chun's mouth were not necessarily small troubles. Everything this disciple seemed to be involved in was not a small matter. In front of the elders, Yang Chun did not give face and laid down 3 restrictions in a row. Then he said, "This part is the core inheritance of the Taishamen." When Yang Chun said this, everyone's face suddenly changed. The core inheritance of the Taishamen had been taken away by Sect Master Li when he escaped. Even the major sect did not get it. How could it fall into the hands of Yang Chun? At this time, Palace Master Zhang Jiao and others really recalled that before the Greatest Heaven Sect extermination incident, Yang Chun once said that the pure Yang Palace only needed to follow several major sects, not to force their way out, not to covet any benefits, not to show the true intention of not showing the mountain and not revealing the water. If the core inheritance of the Taishamen had fallen into the hands of Yang Chun, it meant that Yang Chun had clearly expected the consequences of the extermination of the Taishamen. How was this possible? No one was an immortal who could conclude in advance that the Greatest Heaven Sect, this behemoth, would one day fall down and never get up again. To be able to intercept this batch of core inheritance meant that Yang Chun not only knew the whereabouts of Sect Master Li of the Taishamen, but also had the upper hand in the fight. After the extermination of the Taishamen, all the cultivators in the world searched for 100 years and did not find the whereabouts of Sect Master Li. What did this mean? After the analysis of the things before and after, it was easy to draw a frightening conclusion. The extermination of the Taishamen must have a deep relationship with Yang Chun. Even from the meaning revealed by Yang Chun, it was at least a direct relationship. Such a big thing, how could it not frighten everyone present? So, the matter of the Taishamen. The head of the palace only opened his mouth and did not ask about the following things. He just stared at Yang Chun's face, seemingly expecting a clear answer from Yang Chun, but also seemed a little afraid that he would give a clear answer. Yang Chun did not let everyone down. He nodded heavily in the expectation of everyone. There is some relationship. The Taishamen want to exterminate my Chunyang palace. The disciple naturally can't let them live well. Hearing that Yang Chun said that there was some relationship, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. then looked at each other and saw the surprise and joy in each other's eyes. At that time, the arrangement of the Taishanmen against the Chunyang Palace was seen through. At that time, everyone present wanted to fight with the Taishanmen to the death, but the strength of the two sides was too disparate. Everyone could only swallow their anger, and even later they had to accept the humiliation of Ming Guangrua. Now, Yang Chen just said a sentence, and it let everyone's depression from that year vent out. The extermination of the Taishanmen caused public anger. Everyone was happy, but there was no feeling of exaltation from the bottom of their hearts. However, the answer given by Yang Chen to everyone made everyone have a kind of indescribable comfort. It turned out that the Taishanmen were exterminated because of the disciple of the Chunyang Palace. It turned out that the feeling of completely avenging a great grievance was so carefree and made one's mind clear. Although no one laughed heartily, it seemed that in an instant, everyone felt as if the haze in front of their eyes had been swept away, and even their cultivation seemed to have increased a little. After the joy, everyone thought of other things, and the head of the palace immediately asked, "What about Sect Master Li and the others?" Even the Chunyang Palace had a blue vault mountain Immortal's cave, not to mention the Taishanmen. Sect Master Li fled with people, and the major sect couldn't find them. Now Yang Chen had the core inheritance of the Taishanmen in his hands. Where did the reserved disciples of the Taishanmen go? The things are in the hands of the disciples, and the people are naturally gone. Yang Chen did not hide it, and directly replied, "The disciples left for more than 7 years because of this." These things, Yang Chen told the head of the palace after careful consideration. Sometimes people were like this. Only when they were burdened with some pressure would they have the motivation to move forward. Once there was no pressure, they would instead fall into a state of carefree laziness. This kind of situation was not good, and it was especially fatal for cultivation. The high-level officials of the Chunyang Palace now had such a little clue. The Taishanmen were exterminated, and their own sect was on good terms with other major sects. There was the only 5th-grade alchemist disciple in the sect. It could almost be said that the whole world gave them face. There were materials, manpower, many disciples, and countless masters. The people of the Chunyang Palace now seemed to have no pressure at all. It was not the same as when they had to guard against the Taishanmen all the time. Yang Chen must give everyone a little pressure in order to let the head of the palace maintain their previous fighting spirit. Otherwise, this kind of slack alone was enough to make Yang Chen's previous efforts go to waste. Yang Chen would never allow such a thing to happen. Therefore, letting the high-level officials know these things was also to let them always think that they still had to face the behemoth Xiantian sect and maintain a more vigorous fighting spirit. Chapter 1444. Their own disciple actually killed the sect master of the Taishanmen, and even the Taishanmen's escape route was completely cut off. This matter, even if it had been more than 100 years, still scared the head of the palace and broke into a cold sweat. Once this matter was known by the Xiantian sect, as long as one person from the Chunyang Palace ascended, they would die, and there would be no other possibility. How could such a big event not make the core members frightened? For the Taishanmen, the high-level members of the Chunyang Palace absolutely hated them, but even so, they did not suppress their fear of the Taishanmen. There was no other reason. Above the Taishanmen, there was a more terrifying Xiantian sect. Yang Chen's purpose was completely achieved. The expressions of the high-level members were absolutely cautious, and their minds began to focus on how to deal with the huge threat in the future. When there were only 8 Yuanying stage masters in the Chunyang Palace, they dared to stand against the Taishanmen and not yield. Now the Chunyang Palace was so powerful, and its strength was more than 10,000 times better than before. After a short period of worry, several of the core members immediately became high-spirited. This was the right way. To live in sorrow and to die in peace and contentment was not for mortals, it was more important for cultivators. Cultivation was not to be aloof from the world, but to fight with the sky, to fight with the earth, to fight with people, to fight with oneself, this was the right way. If it was really to be aloof from the world, then why bother to improve the realm? To improve the realm was to surpass oneself, it was to compete with oneself. Looking at the elders so cheered up, Yang Chen was happy in his heart, and a smile appeared on his face. Such a Chunyang palace would have the opportunity to stabilize the super sect in the future, and be qualified to stand in the immortal world. The head of the palace did not ask how Yang Chen solved the Taishaman sect masterly. Everyone only knew that the core inheritance of the Taishaman had fallen into the hands of the Chunyang palace, which was enough. As for how these inheritances could be cultivated by the core disciples of Chunyang palace, it was even simpler. The mysterious Heaven sect didn't know that the core inheritances were not passed on to outsiders. As long as a few Taishaman's core techniques were leaked, it would be enough for the mysterious Heaven sect to not pursue this matter. Since there was a core legacy left behind, Yang Chen was not stingy. He contributed a lot of high-grade materials to the sect. What was given to the sect were all brought out by sect leaderly, and the Taishaman's reserves had not been included. Even so, it was still a huge fortune that made one's hair stand on end. At this point, the sect did not take advantage of Yang Chen. The head of the palace and several elders directly refused. Since the item was obtained by Yang Chen, it belonged to Yang Chen. Yang Chen could make a move through Wanbao Tower at the right time. Now that Wanbao Tower was so large, it could easily digest an astronomical amount of stolen goods. Moreover, his own industry was more secretive and safe. As for the sect, when needed, it could be purchased from Wanbao Tower at the internal price of the sect at any time and anywhere. Anyway, everything had to be counted as spirit stones for Yang Chen. He would never take advantage of his own disciples on this. This was also a good way to deal with it. Anyway, after a long time, it was not a big deal for a large-scale business like Wanbao Tower to have a few kinds of high-grade goods. The current Chunyang Palace was not the same as before. What they had in their hands had to be interrogated by others. Whoever dared to do this, there was no need for Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace to do it. It was not known how many masters who wanted to have a relationship with Yang Chen would take the initiative to solve problems for Yang Chen. Palace Master Elders, has the sect ever considered occupying a large area elsewhere, building another stove, and building a Chunyang side palace? After dealing with the property and putting pressure on the elders, Yang Chen began to discuss another matter. As soon as Yang Chen spoke, several high-level officials were immediately stunned. Wang Yong asked with some surprise, "Other places? The Taishaman Mountain Gate, they are willing to give up a piece of land?" It was no wonder that the Master Ancestor asked this. It was really that in addition to annexing some small sect, where was there a suitable place to set up a sect? The so-called starting another stall, wasn't this the meaning? In recent hundreds of years, it seemed that only the Taishaman Mountain Gate was vacant. It was a blessed place, but it was divided by the four major sects. Could it be that the four major sects took the initiative to show goodwill? It's not Taishaman. Yang Chen shook his head directly. Now the Taishaman Mountain Gate was a time bomb. Except for the four major sects, no other sect could afford it. From the beginning to the end, Yang Chen did not have the idea of fighting Taishaman. He referred to another place. If it's not Taishaman, then where is it? The head of the palace was also confused and asked with a frown. "I can't say it." Yang Chen replied with a wry smile. This was also the place that made him uncomfortable. He knew this place, but he couldn't say it. He could only see whether the elders of his sect had extreme trust in him. Several elders' eyes were wide open. The place that couldn't be said, Yang Chen even wanted to pull them to build a pure Yang side palace? If it weren't for Yang Chen's previous performance that had always been satisfactory, they would have to let Yang Chen talk about it this time. The place that Yang Chen was talking about was the Demon Continent. The core of the Demon Continent had been refined by Yang Chen hundreds of years ago, and there was no more overflow of demonic energy. According to Yang Chen's estimation, those beasts entrenched in the core of the demon continent would definitely go crazy without the rich demonic energy. There could only be one consequence of the beasts going crazy. That was, the entire demon continent would no longer have ordinary cultivators who dared to enter. The strongest Earth Immortal level beasts could definitely kill all the cultivators on the demon continent, unless they escaped quickly and quickly left the demon continent. Staying on the demon continent was definitely a dead end. However, that was the initial situation. As time went by, those beasts would not be nourished by the demonic energy, and their strength would slowly decline. The longer the time, the more their strength would decline. The same was true for the strength of the demonized beast. If there were more cultivators who entered, as long as they were strong enough, they could definitely survive. The important point was that the demonic energy of the demon continent would slowly be absorbed by the demonized beast. The demonic energy would become lighter and lighter, and eventually disappear without a trace. The demon continent without the demonic energy was definitely a treasure land for cultivation. There had been many big sects in the past. Now it was a blank virgin land, waiting for outsiders to reclaim it. With such a big bargain, how could Yang Chen not think about the sect? He had Chunyang Palace, and now he had a part of the Shirwan Mountain, Meiqing Mountain, and Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, but a cunning rabbit had 3 burrows, and it was not a bad thing to have one more backup. In any case, Yang Chen would let Chunyang Palace get enough benefits on the demon continent. Because of the big heart demon oath, Yang Chen couldn't tell outsiders about the demon continent. But now it was an excellent opportunity, and it was also the best time for Chunyang Palace to expand. If he didn't seize the opportunity, he would have no place to cry in the future. Chapter 1445. Yang Chen said very seriously, and the head of the palace was also very serious about it. This disciple of his family had never done anything unreliable. Since he said that there was an opportunity to build a pure Yang palace, then there must be. Even if he couldn't say where it was, this opportunity must be real. The high-level officials had absolute trust in Yang Chen. After exchanging a few glances with the head of the palace and several core elders, everyone nodded slightly and agreed. Yang Chen, if you want to build this pure Yang palace, how many people, how many resources, and how long will it take? The head of the palace was very formal and asked specific questions. The manpower needs to be strong in the early stage, at least 10 masters of the Deshang stage, and at least 2 elders must come forward. Yang Chen had already made a decision in his heart and immediately said his considerations. There will be hundreds of Yuanying stage ancestors and thousands of Jedan stage masters. After the foothold is established, we can transfer the younger disciples and mortals on a large scale. Do you still want to transfer mortals? Elder Jingfeng keenly caught the words in Yang Chen's mouth and asked in time. There are no mortals there, everything is started from scratch. However, the land is vast and it is also suitable for mortals to live. As long as the mortals in the past live for a few generations, the population can multiply and it can also bring us a large number of disciples. Yang Chen immediately explained seriously, and at the same time did not forget to explain the benefits. If it is properly arranged, those mortals will be directly under the control of the pure Yang Palace. There is no need to worry about other sect competing. If possible, it is not impossible to build a few mortal countries over there. Everyone heard a burst of cold air. They could build a country over there, which was definitely more promising than being trapped here in Meiqing Mountain. It must be known that now the Chunyang Palace was recruiting disciples, or the former slaves secretly returned to the mortal world to look for them, for fear of being known by other sects. If there was a mortal country under their own control, all the people in the country would be attached to the name of the pure Yang Palace, which would be hundreds of times stronger than it is now. If it was such an environment, not to mention just building a courtyard, the head of the palace would want to move the entire Chunyang Palace. If it wasn't for the fact that the 8 characters of the Meiqing Mountain Chunyang Palace was the site handed down by the ancestors and could not be given up, the head of the palace wanted to personally lead the team to build the Chunyang Palace. My initial estimate is that it will take about 200 years to establish a firm foothold. After 200 years, we can transfer mortals and low-level disciples on a large scale. Yang Chun made a rough estimate and gave such a time frame. The demon continent was such a large territory. It would take at least 100 years to clean up the demonized monster beasts, to clean up the demonic qi, and to create an environment suitable for mortals to survive. Leaving more room for maneuver could also make Chunyang Palace more fully prepared. You choose the manpower yourself. Yang Qin, you are fully responsible for all the matters of the construction of the courtyard. Whether Chunyang Palace can take the opportunity to grow or not depends on you this time. The head of the palace was also a decisive figure. After so many years, he also understood how great an opportunity this was for the development of Chunyang Palace. He did not hesitate and directly gave orders. This disciple accepts the order. The head of the palace was so solemn that Yang Qin also solemnly bowed to accept the order. Yang Qin, this old man will go with you this time to broaden my horizons. As soon as the head of the palace was finished, the ancestor Wang Yong took the initiative to jump out and wanted to go with Yang Qin. Yang Qin said that 2 elders were needed. As the ancestor of Yang Qin, he had a strong cultivation base and was a master of the Deshang stage. His combat power was strong and he was definitely the most suitable one. Listening to you, it seems that there are also hardships ahead. Count this old man in. Hall Master Meng of the Law Enforcement Hall also jumped out and volunteered. This old man is also a little curious. I want to go and see it, and I will also go with you. Gong Xuanling's ancestor Elder Gao Shiyan also said. At once, there were 3 core elders who volunteered to go, and they were all masters of the Deshang stage. Such a lineup made the head of the palace feel relieved and nodded directly. Of course, Yang Qin would not refuse. This time, it was not to enjoy, but to open up, and there would be no shortage of battles. Whether it was the ancestor Wang Yong or Hall Master Meng or Elder Gao, their status was enough and their combat power was outstanding. It was appropriate to sit in the Chunyang Palace. Palace Master, Elders, that place is relatively large. It is estimated that my Chunyang Palace sect can't eat it. When the 3 elders made a decision, Yang Chun said his other idea. It is taboo to eat alone. Maybe we should pull a few big sect together. The territory of the demon continent was larger than the current Dao sects and demon sect. It was absolutely wishful thinking for Chunyang Palace to want to eat it. It was better to take advantage of this opportunity to draw some interest partners, and everyone would divide the demon continent together. With these interest partners, even if Chunyang Palace had to face a strong enemy, looking at this strong interest bond, Chunyang Palace would also have a strong support. It is not fat to eat alone, this is the truth. The head of the palace nodded directly when he heard the words, and several elders also had the same attitude. Why did the Taishanmen become the public enemy of the world? Wasn't it because their own sect wanted to occupy the spiritual power of the world and eat alone, which provoked public anger? The Taishanmen had only been a lesson for 100 years. In any case, Chunyang Palace would not make the same mistake again. The 4 major sect of Dao sects, Demon Sect and Monster Race each bring 2 sects, and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance also pull 2, it should be almost enough. Yang Chun cautiously said his own suggestion, and then waited for the head of the palace to make a decision. The 4 major sect of Dao sects is fine, but why do you want to pull in the Demon Sect and Monster Race? Elder Gung Hong asked doubtfully. I am from Chunyang Palace Dao sects. With this arrangement, will I be accused of colluding with the Demon Sect? Elder, it is still the same sentence, it is not fat to eat alone. Yang Chun sighed and replied, my Dao sects are not covering the sky with one hand. Everyone suddenly realized that the Chunyang Palace eating alone was eating alone. Similarly, the Dao sect's eating alone was also eating alone. This was the level of vision. Although the elders had become masters of the Deshang stage, their vision of the overall situation was still not enough. If it weren't for Yang Chen's reminder, Chunyang Palace would have offended people for no reason. Since this matter is fully handled by you, you don't have to discuss it with us. You can arrange it yourself. The head of the palace also understood a lot of things in an instant. He smiled and said to Yang Chen, "The few of us are still sitting here honestly, reading and cultivating, waiting for your good news. I will follow the teachings of the head of the sect. This disciple will do his best." Yang Chen said no more and directly bowed to leave. Chapter 1446. After coming to Yang Chen's side, Yang Chen's wives and concubines began to study in seclusion. In the beginning, the women were not very interested. Everyone's cultivation methods were different, and each direction of cultivation was different. What was the use of reading so many classics? Among the classics selected by Yang Chen for each of them, except for about 40% of the classics that were related to their own cultivation or interests, the rest were public classics that everyone had to read. Almost all of them were knowledge in various aspects. Astronomy, geography, medicine, astrology, poetry, songs, essays, and stories were almost everything. Not only that, but even some basic alchemy, refining, formation, yin and yang 5 elements, magic weapons and martial arts were all included. All the classics, Yang Chen asked them to read them all. Just reading them once was not enough. Yang Chen even asked the women to thoroughly understand these public parts of the classics, to understand and memorize them. Although this was not a difficult thing for the women who had reached the Deshang stage, the women were still somewhat resistant at first. What was the use of reading these? As long as they read the things that were related to themselves, wouldn't it be contrary to their deep and pure cultivation to know so many irrelevant things? However, the women did not dare to disobey the instructions of their husband, especially the kind of monstrous performance that Yang Chen showed in the process of contact with the women, which could be said to be a flawless plan, also made the women put down the resistance in their hearts. Even if they were unwilling in their hearts, they still insisted on completing their husband's instructions. These things were boring at first, they were all basic things. The women did not particularly like them, and they always couldn't read them. It was strange to say that after reading it for a period of time, the women were stunned to find that some things seemed to be very helpful to themselves. There were some things that he couldn't understand in the past that he couldn't comprehend, but after reading these contents, he actually had some new perspective. Although they didn't dare to say that it was a revolutionary inspiration for themselves, it always gave them another direction to think about, and also gave them some more perspectives to consider problems. Just the content in the public part, with the qualifications of the women, they had read it for 30 years. Of course, except for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. They have the experience of reading for the first 50 years, and they are more happy to be immersed in it. When they picked up the ancient books that suited their own preferences and cultivation directions, the girls discovered that some of the things that they originally needed to spend a long time in seclusion to comprehend now seemed so simple. Although he still needed time to understand those profound things, he could always find an entry point to solve the problem from various aspects. To put it simply, he had unknowingly achieved an improvement in his state of mind. It couldn't be counted as personal experience, nor could it be counted as an experience in the mortal world. But just by talking on paper, it gave them a lot of experience. The girls had never thought that just reading books would allow them to improve their realms to such an extent. How was this studying? This was clearly closed-door cultivation. After understanding this, the girls became more and more immersed in it. They studied the classics that Yang Chen had carefully selected for them almost word by word, for fear of missing something. From the previous Yang Chen used the majesty of his husband to force them to read, to the present active research, the attitude alone was earth-shaking change. In fact, the reason was very simple. To use a more modern description, scholars in all walks of life would definitely become more and more specialized in their own areas of expertise. However, those basic subjects must be mastered by people no matter what research direction. Otherwise, the more in-depth the research, the more difficult it would be. The public classics that Yang Chen let the girls read were equivalent to those basic subjects and tool subjects. If they wanted to cultivate, they had to specialize in their own direction. These things were indispensable in the future. The strongest cultivation realm in the mortal world was the Mahayana stage. Even if there were a few special masters of the supreme level, they were only at the human immortal level. But this human immortal was not the same human immortal. The human immortal who ascended to the spiritual world after crossing the tribulation was fundamentally different from the human immortal masters who stayed in the mortal world to forcibly improve their cultivation. Not to mention the spiritual pressure of the cultivation environment, there was a world of difference in the vision of the realm. In the spiritual world, there were masters at the level of earth immortal and heaven immortal as reference. Even if it was cultivation, there would be a higher direction, but in the mortal world, one could only rely on their own assumptions to cultivate. After arriving in the spiritual world, after referring to the experience of the predecessors, one would naturally find the shortcomings in these basic aspects, and then patiently learn to supplement, so that one's vision and knowledge would go to a higher level, and the future cultivation would become easier and easier. In the end, the cultivators of the mortal world were just frogs at the bottom of a well. They thought that fire masters only needed to be proficient in fire, and water masters only needed to be proficient in water. At most, in order to deal with enemies of different attributes, they just needed to understand the characteristics of other attributes. This was like a primary school student thinking that physicists only needed to understand physics, and chemists only needed to understand chemistry. As for mathematics and language, they could completely ignore it. Not to mention that they were very partial to other subjects, they didn't need to understand other subjects. Little did they know that a real scientist would master all the basic subjects, and then use the knowledge of these basic subjects to serve their own research. Others did not have the experience of Yang Chen as a great principal golden immortal. Even if they understood this truth, they could not find the most suitable book to study from the vast number of ancient books. Yang Chen was different. With the memory of his previous life, for the cultivation of the mortal masters, Yang Chen could give comprehensive guidance without pressure. Of course, it was only limited to the close people around Yang Chen who had such treatment. In addition to his own wives and concubines, that is, the high-level members of Chunyang Palace had guidance in this regard. If others wanted Yang Chen's golden mouth to give guidance, they didn't even need to think about it. In a short period of 50 years of reading, the women did not even deliberately step up their cultivation, but it was also in line with the subtlety of the natural law, and their cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds in these 50 years. Gao Yugong Sunling, Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingshue's 4 wives, Shi Wushuang and the Murong sisters' 6 concubines, all broke through the bottleneck of the early Deshang stage in these 50 years and entered the middle Deshang stage. All the women were like this, and Yang Chen himself did not fall behind. Hundreds of millions of ancient books were read one by one, as if countless masters gave Yang Chen a comprehensive lesson. Before meeting the head of the palace, Yang Chen had already steadily stepped into the middle Deshang stage. In the past 100 years, Yang Chen has absorbed and merged 12 kinds of 6th-grade fire seed. The fire attribute spirit power was unique and completely overwhelmed other spirit powers. Now looking at Yang Chen, he was a pure fire attribute master, not like before, it was unpredictable. Chapter 1447. This was also intentional by Yang Chen. Yang Chen's goal was to be fully prepared to absorb the 7th-grade fire seed. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire has now reached the most critical moment. Every step it takes and every kind of fire seed it absorbs can affect the success or failure of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire. Returning from the Chunyang Palace Conference Hall, Yang Chun called all the women to his side. The women were still immersed in reading, and they were called over by Yang Chun, and they were a little reluctant. However, Yang Chun just used one sentence to let them completely shift their attention to Yang Chun. If I give your respective sect a chance to expand at least twice your territory, would your sect want it? Yang Chun said it lightly, but the content was like a thunder that exploded in the minds of the women. Except for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, all the other women had a shocked expression. What was the concept of expanding the territory by 2 times? It must be known that Yang Chen's wives and concubines, except for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, were all genius disciples of the Four Sect. The Four Sect did not know that it took tens of thousands of years, or even longer, to reach their current scale and status. Yang Chen's light words, could it be compared with the hard work of so many predecessors for so many years? The eyes of the women were all focused on Yang Chen. So many beautiful eyes, the same gaze staring at Yang Chen, made Yang Chen very satisfied. You followed me and left the sect for a long time. Although you will return to the sect every once in a while, the contribution to the sect is obviously not enough. Yang Chen did not explain directly. Instead, he used these words as an opening. Hubby, I now know of an opportunity for you to make a great contribution to the sect. It all depends on whether you are willing to believe me and whether your respective sects are willing to believe me. Husband, what kind of opportunity is it? Shi Wushuang asked anxiously before the other women could. I can't say. Yang Chun shook his head, but immediately added, but I can guarantee that twice the territory is the lowest possible benefit. Husband, we believe you. However, isn't it a little too childish to report this to the sect without any proof? Shi Wushuang frowned and asked. At the end of the day, Yang Chen didn't leak any extra information, which made it hard to explain to the sect. You just have to say that I, your husband, said it. You don't have to say anything else. Yang Chen smiled and explained. My husband can't say it, naturally there is a reason why he can't say it. You take the words back, if you are willing, then you have to start preparing. Husband, what kind of preparations do we need? Murong Han knew that this was an important matter. After being with Yang Chen for such a long time, she knew that Yang Chen wasn't someone who spoke without thinking. Since Yang Chen said that there was such an opportunity, there must be such an opportunity. In this aspect, the Murong sisters trusted Yang Chen more directly. Experts. Yang Chen replied without hesitation, the more, the better. The more experts we have, the bigger the territory we will occupy. Husband, if we bring enough experts with us, will we start fighting for territory? Shi Shanshan was more cautious. Hearing Yang Chen's words, she also asked. The territory is very big. Even if you bring the whole sect, you can't occupy it all. Yang Chen replied with a smile. Yang Chen only said that he wanted to bring experts, but he did not say the idea of transferring the junior disciples and the ordinary people. Presumably, everyone would have thought of bringing a junior disciple over, but probably no one would have thought of bringing a mortal over. After all, except for Yang Chen, no one knew what the specific situation was. By the time the major sect reacted, Chunyang Palace had been operating and preparing for decades. It was normal for them to maintain a temporary advantage. Chunyang Palace couldn't compete with the major sect in terms of comprehensive strength at this stage. It could only take some advantages in such a small place. The major sect would not have any discord for Yang Chen's sake. It would also lay the groundwork for the future development and growth of Chunyang Palace. Listening to Yang Chen's words, the women began to have waves in their hearts. Yang Chen would not lie about such a big thing. If he said that there was this opportunity, then there must be this opportunity. Moreover, Yang Chen also made it clear that he would give them a great contribution to the sect. If they didn't have such a relationship with Yang Chen, it was estimated that they would not know about this matter. After thinking about this, the women began to get excited. If they really found what Yang Chen said, it would definitely be a super great contribution for them. The sect had not expanded its territory for many years. The most recent time was when the four sects divided the mountain gate of Taishanmen. However, when Yang Chen made a move, he expanded the current territory twice. If the sect master knew about it, it would definitely cause a frenzy. The territory was big enough that even the entire sect could move there. This also meant that the major sect did not have to fight for territory. Where else could they find such a good thing? The women now wished they could return to the sect immediately and report the good news to their sect master. After asking Yang Chen about all the news that they could learn for the time being, the women began to quickly return to the sect and report to their respective sect masters. Of course, the specific matters had to be discussed by their respective sect masters at Chunyang Palace. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling didn't have to be so troublesome, as long as they followed Yang Chen. Anyway, they knew that wherever Yang Chen went, they would go. For the two women, Yang Chen did not hide anything and told them directly that the goal was the demon continent. From Yang Chen's previous performance that he couldn't say it, the two women vaguely guessed that it was related to the demon continent. Now that they got a specific answer, the two women were also a little stunned. The two women didn't know about refining the core of the demon continent, let alone that the demon continent had undergone earth-shaking changes, but out of trust in Yang Chen, they didn't question it. Next, Yang Chen informed Lady Fanghua through a special channel. The two sects of the demon sect were naturally Yin Yang Demon School and Wuji Demon School, the two sects related to Yang Chen. As for the Monster Clan and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, they selected the two largest sects and invited their sect masters to come to Chunyang Palace for discussion. On the appointed day, the four major sects of the Dao sects, the Demon Sect, the Monster Clan, and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance invited by Yang Chen all arrived. Apart from the four major sects related to Yang Chen and Yin Yang Demon School and Wuji Demon School, the sect masters of the Monster Clan and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance did not have any doubts at all, giving enough face to Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace. It was related to the future development plan of these sects. Even if the sect masters held an attitude that they would rather believe it, they had to come in person to understand what kind of opportunity it was. Chapter 1448. The 10 sect masters gave Yang Chen enough face this time. Not only did they come in person, but they also came in accordance with Yang Chen's request. They came in private and secretly. Even some of the elders of their sect did not know about it. Chunyang Palace also put on a grand scene. Of course, the grandeur was only relative to those who knew about it. Moreover, it was only after they arrived at the mountain gate that they were well received. People outside did not know that Chunyang Palace had received such 10 VIPs. Even inside Chunyang Palace, except for Yang Chen's family and several core executives, no one knew that the 10 sect masters had come to Chunyang Palace. The disciples in charge of reception only knew that the palace master had asked them to receive them carefully, but he did not let them know the identity of the guests. The sect masters of Taoism, Demon Sect, and Demon Sect stood face to face. This was a major event that could not be achieved even when the Taishanmen were annihilated. At that time, the sect masters of each sect were in charge of the sect. Now, because of Yang Chen, everyone gathered in the small Chunyang Palace. If people knew about it, they would definitely be shocked. Without the Taishanmen, coupled with the tacit understanding of each sect during the annihilation of the Taishanmen, these sect masters did not fight together. In the past, this was something that was unimaginable. Taoism and Demon Sect could not coexist. When did the sect master of Yin Yang Demon School and the sect master of Blue Cloud Sect meet so peacefully? However, it was done in Chunyang Palace. Not only that, when they met each other, everyone had a warm smile on their faces. They cupped their hands and bowed to each other. It was a harmonious and great scene. Thanks to Master Yang, this is the first time I've met Sect Master Yi. It's an honor to meet you. I didn't expect that we would meet one day. My apologies for not recognizing you. If one did not know the identity of these sect masters, others would definitely think that they were old friends meeting when they saw such a scene. Who would know that these were the heads of several big forces that were at odds with each other? It was impossible for Yang Chen not to reveal any inside information in front of so many sect masters of the great sect. These sect masters were not like the higher-ups of Chunyang Palace who trusted Yang Chen. If he wanted them to believe him, he had to show them something. However, Yang Chen's performance made the head of the palace feel strange. Even in front of so many sect masters, Yang Chen's statement was still the same as when he was in front of them. He couldn't say it. It's true that we're expanding our territory, but I can't say where exactly. Facing the 10 sect leaders, Yang Chen did not seem to feel any pressure at all. Instead, he acted as though he was a junior and spoke to the sect leaders calmly. In this regard, the head of the palace was puzzled. Did Yang Chen not want to do this? Why did he still have such an attitude in front of these sect leaders? The head of the palace did not understand, but the 10 sect masters did not blame Yang Chen, they just frowned one by one. It had to be said that this was the difference between a big sect and a small sect. For the people of a small sect, it was already good to have a few people go to the demon continent to gain experience. Naturally, when they came back, they would abide by the heart demon oath and would not reveal the situation of the demon continent. On the other hand, the big sect always had a way to sacrifice a few pawns, and they could get most of the information that was not detailed but had a concept. Yang Chen said that he couldn't say it, but the sect masters of these big sect who came already knew where Yang Chen was referring to. Which sect master was not a smart person, with a few hints, they understood the target. However, was the environment of the demon continent really suitable for sending people to take risks? On this point, everyone expressed their doubts. It couldn't be helped, they were not the head of the palace and the core high level. For Yang Chen, they had more respect and thought of winning him over, but they did not have much trust. If it weren't for Yang Chen's reputation as a 5th-grade alchemist master, these sect masters would not come at all. Of course, it was also related to Yang Chen's wives and concubines. They were all important figures in the sect, and they had to consider their thoughts. Even if Yang Chen invited them to come over just to talk nonsense, at most, it would be a wasted trip, but they could gain the hearts of their disciples, so it was not a loss at all. Yang Chen just said a sentence, and it made the sect masters fall into silence. No one spoke for a long time, and they were all speculating in their hearts about the intention of Yang Chen to say this and the possibility of this operation. For the expansion of the territory of their own sect, none of the sect masters present was unwilling. If it was done, this was not just a matter of benefits, but also a huge gain in reputation and prestige. But if they had to pay a huge price for this, it would be another matter. There must be sacrifices in the expansion of territory. There was no doubt about this. No one was the kind of idealist who thought that a person could get a large piece of territory without dying, and no one thought that they could grasp this benefit in their hands without paying a little price. What everyone was worried about was nothing more than the comparison between the cost and the benefit. The demon continent was not an ordinary place. Not only were there demonized monster beasts, but there were also raging demonic chi. This made it so that except for the masters who needed life and death experiences to increase their cultivation, other cultivators were not willing to go there to cultivate. It was too fierce and inconsistent with the purpose of cultivation. However, if the demon continent could really be occupied, it would definitely be a huge breakthrough for the respective sect. It was so much so that even if these people met the leaders of their sects after they ascended, they could still stand up straight and proudly tell them that they had brought glory to their sections. Everything depended on whether Yang Chen's words were trustworthy or not. However, everyone knew that due to the Great Heart Demon Oath, Yang Chen would certainly not say a word about the internal situation of the demon continent. Now that he could inform them together, it had already shown his attitude. What was needed now was their decision as the sect master. Whether to be a pioneer and leave a lasting legacy or a mediocre defender, it depended on their trust in Yang Chen. In this regard, the sect masters of the four major Tao sects had a small advantage. Their disciples were the people around Yang Chen, and Yang Chen would not harm them. Although the demon sect Yin Yang Demon School and Wuji Demon School both had some connections with Yang Chen, it was impossible for Lady Fanghua to let the sect master know her close relationship with Yang Chen, and Yi Zhenxiong would not confide in Yang Chen just because of Yi Yu. The demon sect was suspicious, it was not just a saying. As for the people of the monster race and the rogue cultivator alliance, their relationship with Yang Chen was at most that they had bought Yang Chen's medicinal pills and had contact with the ancient books of the Zhao family manor, and there were no other deeper relationship. A stranger gave a big gift for no reason, who dared to risk the future of the sect. The four major Tao sects were all here. Who knew if this was a means for one Tao sect to attack the other? There was no reason to be courteous, it was a thief. Chapter 1449. However, the demon continent was really tempting. If they really took it, or if they could get a piece of the pie, it would definitely be a big profit. Seniors, it was originally just a matter of my Chunyang Palace. Of course, Yang Chen knew what they were worried about. After everyone was silent for a while and thought about the pros and cons, he took the opportunity to say, however, my Chunyang Palace is weak in manpower. I'm afraid I can't eat such a large territory. Moreover, it's not fat to eat alone, so I want to cooperate with all the seniors. Of course, if my Tao sect's 5 sects come forward, it's not impossible. After a pause, Yang Chen continued to explain. It's still the same sentence, it's not fat to eat alone, so I specially invited all of you together. As for whether it's okay or not, it's just a matter of the seniors' word. There must be some risk. If the seniors are not willing, this junior will never force it. Yang Chen's face was always smiling, and the speed of his speech was not fast or slow, very calm. However, if you regret it afterwards, you can't blame this junior for not telling you in advance. Inviting so many sect, naturally, some things must be made clear. Otherwise, if people misunderstood, it would not be a good thing for Chunyang Palace. Fortunately, this kind of thing could be explained in a few words. Yang Chen's meaning was very clear. Originally, my Chunyang Palace was a matter of one family. I don't think it's good to eat alone, so I take you to play. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, but you can't look for trouble in the future. That was the meaning. They were all smart people. How could the 10 sect masters not understand that this was Yang Chen's provocation? However, it was a matter of great importance. Yang Chen's words alone could not make the 10 sect masters put the sect on him. At this time, it depended on everyone's decisiveness. Speaking of it, several sect masters were very dissatisfied with Yang Chen's intention of expressing his position immediately. Such a big thing, just by Yang Chen's words. Did Yang Chen have such great prestige? Everyone was still hesitating, but the Lord of Tantai of the Green Jade Immortal Island unexpectedly asked, "You're going too? The Pure Yang Palace is also going?" "Of course, I will go. Chunyang Palace will select a group of people to build the Chunyang courtyard." Yang Chen immediately replied with a smile. When Yang Chen invited these sect masters over, he didn't let them explain clearly what the matter was. Even his wives and concubines had repeatedly instructed them to invite the sect master over to discuss some matters, but did not specify the specifics. Now that Yang Chen said that he and Yang Chen would go to Chunyang Palace, the 10 sect masters immediately changed their minds. He wanted to go to Chunyang Palace, but not all of it. He just wanted to build a Chunyang villa, which meant that the foundation of Meiqing Mountain was still there. For the major sect, this was a huge mortgage and countless hostages. It also meant that Chunyang Palace did not intend to trick them in this matter. The anger of the top 10 sect, even the Taishanmen did not dare to say that they could bear it, let alone the small Chunyang Palace. Even if the strength of Chunyang Palace had skyrocketed over the years, there was still an essential gap with these super sects. It was much easier to destroy the whole Chunyang Palace than to destroy the Taishanmen. There was no need for the whole world to unite, or even the top 10 sect to unite. A super sect was enough. Since Chunyang Palace did not intend to trick people, it meant that this matter was probably true. Thinking of this, the several sect masters had begun to be tempted, but this matter was of great importance, and they needed some more accurate confirmation. The problem was that Yang Chen would not answer their questions at all because of the big heart demon oath. How could they verify this? How to solve this problem? At the critical moment, the sect master of Yin Yang Demon School stood up, reached out, took out a black ball, and put it on the table. As soon as this ball was taken out, it released a very disturbing aura. The palace master had never come into contact with this, and he didn't even know what this was. The other sect masters were clear at a glance. When they saw the ball, they understood that this was the devilish bead. Since Yang Chen returned from the demon continent with the 4 women, the strength of the 4 women had skyrocketed, which aroused the interest of many people. Because of the sale of the 100-year pill, the sect masters knew the existence of the devilish bead. When they saw the real thing, they immediately recognized it. In the end, what everyone was afraid of was the raging demonic energy. Even if Yang Chen had a way to remove the demonic energy, he was only one person. How could he remove the demonic energy of the entire demon continent? If the demonic energy was not removed, anything like occupying territory was just a fantasy. At this point, Yang Chen was already prepared and threw out an array flag. The array flag was naturally refined a long time ago. Among the array flags, Yang Chen put a huge devilish bead from the demonized vine. This kind of devilish bead was born with the ability to gather demonic energy. After Yang Chen used the array to strengthen it, the power of absorbing demonic energy became stronger. Under the eyes of all the sect masters, everyone watched as the array flag absorbed the black aura from the demonic bead, which was a distance away, into the array flag. After a while, the array flag had no change, but the devilish bead had turned pure gold. Facts were far better than eloquence. What they saw with their own eyes was better than what Yang Chen said thousands of words. Everyone stared at the devilish bead and did not speak for a long time. This array, how large can it affect? The sect master of Yin Yang Demon School picked up the devilish bead and stared at it for a long time. Then he handed it to the Wuji Demon School sect master Yi Zhenxiong beside him. After Yi Zhenxiong looked at it, he was not stingy and sent it to the hands of the sect masters one by one. While everyone was examining the devilish bead, the sect master of Yin Yang Demon School had already asked Yang Chen another question. Some of the key materials of this array are only in the hands of this younger generation junior. Yang Chen said with a confident smile on his face. It can affect the entire range. Being able to affect the entire range meant that it could absorb all the demonic energy on the demon continent. As for how Yang Chen did it, the sect masters present didn't care. They only knew that Yang Chen had the ability to do it. With such means, it was no wonder that Chunyang Palace wanted to build a Chunyang courtyard. This was an array, not Yang Chen's own unique ability. With just this, all the sect masters made up their minds. If we want to go, what conditions do we need? Sect Master Lu of Blue Cloud Sect asked immediately. Although Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace said that it was not fat to eat alone, and Chunyang Palace could not eat the demon continent, it was not necessary to give benefits to everyone for no reason. Judging from the consistent style of Yang Chen's behavior in the past, if there were no benefits, Yang Chen would definitely not do it. There would always be certain conditions. 3 conditions. Yang Chen was not polite at all, and directly extended 3 fingers to the 10 sect masters. Chapter 1450. 3 conditions? All the sect masters' eyes were focused on Yang Chen. I am afraid that these 3 conditions are the real benefits that Chunyang Palace wants. For the sake of the huge territory of the demon continent, let's listen to Yang Chen's conditions first. First, this trip is led by this junior in the early stage. Yang Chen was an expert at bargaining, and he said immediately, when we get to the place, before the formation is arranged, everyone must listen to this junior's orders. The current situation of the demon continent was caused by Yang Chen, and Yang Chen naturally knew how to get the greatest benefits. The first requirement was this. At least before the formation to absorb the demonic energy was arranged, Yang Chen must have the right to make decisions. Several sect masters were taken aback when they heard this, but then they were relieved. Without that formation, no matter how many masters went, it would be useless. But would Yang Chen use the masters of their sect to hold back the demonic beasts in order to achieve the purpose of consuming their effective strength? This junior only wants the road to be peaceful, and before the arrangement, once someone acts rashly, the consequences will be worrying. Yang Chen immediately explained, this junior only needs them to go to their respective directions according to this junior's instructions. There is no need to fight, but when to start, it is up to this junior to decide. There was no need to do anything, so there was no need to worry about it before. After thinking about it, several sect masters felt that at most, Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace would snatch the first piece of soup, which was not a big deal. Moreover, if Yang Chen did not arrange the formation, everyone would not be able to do anything if they went in. Yes. Someone agreed immediately. If one person agreed, more people agreed. The conditions were not harsh, so soon the 10 sect masters all nodded and agreed. Second, Chunyang Palace, choose the territory first. Yang Chen raised 2 fingers unceremoniously. 100,000 miles around, the south is near the sea. The south of the demon continent happened to be the most suitable climate and the most fertile land. Yang Chen had long been optimistic about it. Before they set off, they had to settle the interests of the Chunyang Palace first, so as to avoid any disputes in the future. Yes. Needless to say, this question was immediately approved by everyone. The 10 suzerains knew very well that the best territory would definitely be chosen by Chunyang Palace first. Otherwise, why would Chunyang Palace make such a big fuss? Moreover, with the huge area of the demon continent, a radius of 100,000 miles was not big, not even 1/20th. In this respect, the appetite of Chunyang Palace was not big. If he still didn't agree, then it wouldn't be reasonable. Third, in the future, no matter how many sects go there, if there is any territorial dispute with my Chunyang Palace, the sect of the predecessors must stand on the side of my Chunyang Palace. Yang Chen struck while the iron was hot and immediately said the third thing. Speaking of which, the third matter was also logical. This time, Yang Chen only brought 10 sect, and there were more than 20 super big sects of the Tao, Demon and Rogue Cultivators Alliance. This matter would definitely not be kept secret for a long time, at most a few hundred years, and there would definitely be other sects that would discover it. There were only so many territories, and now they were occupied by 10 sect and Chunyang Palace. Other sect would definitely be jealous. The 10 major sects, those sects would not necessarily dare to provoke them, and Chunyang Palace naturally became the softest persimmon. Yang Chen said this to avoid trouble in the future. At that time, all the major sects of the demon continent would stand on the side of Chunyang Palace. If those people wanted to touch Chunyang Palace, they would have to think about it. The 3 conditions put forward by Yang Chen could almost all be said to revolve around the interests of Chunyang Palace. Putting it this way, on the contrary, made the 10 sect masters very relieved. The more Yang Chen emphasized the interests of Chunyang Palace, the greater the certainty of this matter. Otherwise, why would Chunyang Palace play around with everyone? Now that the third condition was put forward, everyone did not respond to it immediately. This condition itself was a bit troublesome. Even the sect masters of the 10 major sects had to think about it carefully. The demon continent was such a large territory and involved such great interests. If the 11 sect masters were to swallow it alone, it would definitely make people jealous. Why would Chunyang Palace pull everyone here? Wasn't it because Chunyang Palace couldn't swallow it alone? Originally, with the relationship between Chunyang Palace and the 4 sects of the Tao sects, it was not too much to consider the benefits of the Tao sects. The problem was that the benefits were too great. Even the 4 sects of the Tao sects plus Chunyang Palace couldn't swallow it. Now the 10 super sect of the Tao, Demon, and Rogue Cultivators Alliance could barely swallow it, but it would definitely face the jealous scramble of the later sect. At that time, to stand up for Chunyang Palace and offend other major sects, whether it was worth it or not, everyone needed to consider it. Yang Chun, what if the last condition can't be agreed to? Yi Zhenxiong and Yang Chun had also been in contact. The people of the Demon sect were also more direct in terms of interests, and they raised the problem without concealing it. Then just pretend that I never said this, please go back. Yi Zhenxiong was straightforward, and Yang Chun was even more straightforward, giving a direct answer. They wanted a good territory, but they didn't want to help Chunyang Palace. How could there be such a good thing? Chunyang Palace didn't specifically give benefits to everyone. Why should they give you all the benefits, but Chunyang Palace had to bear the burden of the bad things? If this was the case, then they would just break up and pretend that this had never happened. According to the current situation, they would do what they should do. For a while, everyone was lost in thought. No one spoke, but the huge territory of the Demon Continent was like the sweetest bait, so that the leaders of the major sects couldn't help but think about the huge benefits and glory that their sect would bring to the sect after getting a part of it. The bait was so sweet that even everyone understood that if they gave up this opportunity, it was likely that this matter would become a heart demon in their own cultivation. Unless the Demon Continent was put into the palm of their hands, this heart demon would follow them for a lifetime. Even if they ascended to the spiritual world and the immortal world, they would be troubled by this inner demon and unable to get rid of it. There was once an opportunity to carry forward the sect in front of him, but he gave it up because he was afraid of a little dispute in the future. If this kind of thing was known by the ancestors of the sect, they would directly criticize him for being irresponsible and having no vision. We, the Green Jade Immortal Island, agree. The Lord of Tantai was the first to speak. We, the Blue Cloud sect, also agree. Following the Lord of Tantai was Sect Master Lu of the Blue Cloud sect. We, the Yin Yang Demon School, also agree. The sect master of Yin Yang Demon School was not willing to lag behind and nodded the third. Everything that happened next was a matter of course. All the sect leaders nodded in agreement. What a joke, it was good for everyone, why would they let it go? Seeing this scene, the palace master finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Chun, on the other hand, secretly smiled in his heart. Chapter 1451. After agreeing to the 3 conditions of Yang Chun, the scene suddenly became harmonious again, and several sect masters even jokingly congratulated the head of the palace. The head of the palace was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. With the support of the top 10 sect, it was impossible for Chunyang Palace to decline. Their own young palace master was really satisfying to the point that they didn't know what to say. It was a pity that the head of the palace still didn't know where the huge site was. He only knew that Chunyang Palace already had 100,000 miles of land, which was hundreds of times larger than the current Chunyang Palace of thousands of miles. Not only that, Chunyang Palace also had the support of the top 10 sect. Even if there was a dispute in the future, the sect would not dare to dispute with Chunyang Palace on the site. In particular, their own sect also took the lead. As long as there was enough time, even without the support of those sects in the future, Chunyang Palace could also grow up and become a super sect that was comparable to these sects. The next thing, it seemed that the palace master didn't need to participate, as long as the reception was good. The interests of Chunyang Palace had been determined, but the top 10 sect had not yet. Therefore, taking advantage of the gathering of the top 10 sect masters, they had to discuss how to come out first. Dividing up the site was one thing, everyone had to discuss a solution to the disputes that had arisen in advance, at least they had to put on an attitude. That place was a dangerous place. If everyone wanted to attack each other again, it would not be good. Yang Chen didn't care about discussing this. Anyway, it had nothing to do with Yang Chen. Yang Chen only needed to determine when to set off. As for the manpower, the top 10 sect would naturally prepare. On the other hand, on the side of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen had to carefully select. Master Ancestor Wang Yong, Law Enforcement Hall Master Meng Xian, and Elder Gao Shiyan were going together. Together with Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, there were already 6 masters of the Deshang stage. There were still 4 missing from the 10 masters of the Deshang stage that Yang Chen said. It must be difficult to go to the demon continent in the early stage, so they must have a strong combat power. In this regard, Ho Yun and the old tree demon Gui Shanyu were undeniable, plus Yang Chen's old acquaintance, Shi Kuei and Xiesha, who have been promoted to the Deshang stage. The number was just right. Developing a new territory was definitely a good opportunity to train, so Yang Chen's disciples definitely had to come along. Mu Bo, Hanameng Yu Yu, Mo Chunmei, Bei Fu Yun, Chinemo, and Yu 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 were all there. Of course, Yang Chen's friends would not be left behind. Du Qian, Wang Yuan, and the others all wanted to follow. Shanghai Feng had to preside over the Wanbao Tower and could not leave. Otherwise, he would have to go. However, even so, Shanghai Feng would also be responsible for the large-scale transfer of mortals from Chunyang Palace, and would also follow later. The disciples of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling also followed to gain experience. In addition to the hundreds of Yuanying stage masters and thousands of Jedon stage masters carefully selected by the head of the palace, the team of Chunyang Palace had all been determined. The 10 sect masters stayed in Chunyang Palace for a full month, and then things were settled after quarreling with each other. At the beginning of the division of the territory, the 10 Deshang stage sect masters did not look like highly respected sect masters. The posture of fighting, except for the fact that they did not fight, was clearly like 10 village men and shrews in the vegetable market. Fortunately, no one saw this scene, otherwise they didn't know how they would break their jaws. The head of the palace also arranged it secretly. When they quarreled and discussed, only the 10 of them were present, and outsiders would not see it. It was more or less to maintain the face of the 10 sect masters. The next step was for the 10 sect masters to return to the sect, organize powerful personnel, organize teams, prepare various materials, and make all kinds of plans to occupy the territory. Everything was done in secret. Even the people who were sent out in secret. Except for the core leaders of the major sects, even the ordinary elders did not know where these people went. To the outside world, it was said that they were cultivating in seclusion. It took more than 2 years for all the major sects to complete their preparations. There was no way, when the stall was big, there were many things, and they had to maintain secrecy. It always took a certain amount of time to cover up all aspects. In this regard, Chunyang Palace was much simpler. First, they were united. Second, the boat was small and easy to turn around. Coupled with Yang Chen's lofty personal prestige, all the preparations had been completed less than half a year after the departure of the major sect. They had been waiting for more than a year just to set off. In order to maintain secrecy, only one master of all the sect came out with an Immortal's cave magic weapon, and the others were brought in. A master would not attract too many people's attention wherever he went. Even if he went to sea, no one would think of anything else. Yang Chen's side was relatively easy. The people of Chunyang Palace, Gong Sunling waved her small hand, and the mountain river geographical map put everyone in it. Master Ancestor Wang Yong, Meng Xian, and Elder Gao Shiyan did not shy away. They entered the mountain river geographical map, but Ho Yun and the old tree demon Shi Kuei and Xie Sha stayed outside. These 4 guys, following Yang Chen to go out to smash and rob, was not the first or second time. Even if others saw them going out with Yang Chen's family, it was estimated that they would not have any other ideas. They would only think that the guy was going to suffer, and would not think of anything else. The four of them stayed outside because of this reason, but others did not have such a good reason. Speaking of which, the major sect was quite cooperative this time. Needless to say, the four major Taoist sects were basically Yang Chen's wives and concubines. Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue, Shi Wushuang, and the Murong sisters, with their Immortal's cave magic weapons, met with Yang Chen and went to sea together. The masters of the other sect did not have such good cover-up. They could only go to sea alone with their Immortal's cave magic weapons, and then meet with Yang Chen in the sea. Yang Chen's family, of course, took Gong Xuanling's ship and went to sea leisurely. After sailing for half a year at sea, they finally met up with the experts of the other 6 sects on a deserted island that they had agreed upon beforehand. The representative of Yin Yang Demon School was Lady Fanghua. When she saw Yang Chen, she did not show any signs of abnormality. The other sects also had a few elders who had seen Yang Chen when he sold the 5th-grade alchemist's secret manual. Only an elder from the Four Seas Alliance of the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance had not seen him before. What was surprising was that he turned out to be a Grand Supreme Master. It was not surprising that the Four Seas Alliance had a Grand Supreme Master. This time, it was a matter of great importance. It was estimated that every sect had sent a Grand Supreme Master, but only the Four Seas Alliance had sent a Grand Supreme Master. "Child, are you Yang Chen?" When the other party saw Yang Chen's family, he directly put on the face of a superior senior and instructed Yang Chen without any trace of politeness. "This time, going out to sea is dangerous. As your senior, I will make the decision for you. From now on, you will listen to my instructions." Chapter 1452. The Four Seas Alliance was a rogue cultivator alliance, and all of them were rogue cultivators. What was a rogue cultivator? It was a rogue cultivator without a sect. Compared with other sect, the alliance formed by these rogue cultivators naturally had a certain gap in seniority structure with a clear organizational structure and clear seniority in the sect. It was precisely for this reason that the people of other sects had no objection to Yang Chen's command in the early stage, but the rogue cultivator of the Four Seas Alliance directly jumped out. Knowing that Yang Chen's first condition was to listen to his command before he started, this great master still jumped out, obviously targeting Yang Chen in particular. As soon as he said this, other people didn't have anything, but the faces of Yang Chen's wives and concubines changed, and the way they looked at the great master changed. "This senior, I don't know if the leader of your alliance has told the senior the 3 conditions of this junior?" Yang Chen was not very angry. He was already a master of the Deshang stage. How could he be as happy as a child in the Qi refining stage? Sitting in the same place, Yang Chen did not move, but asked with a smile and a deep voice. For the eyes of Yang Chen's wives and concubines, the great master of the Four Seas Alliance did not have the slightest pressure. A few little babies in the middle Deshang stage, could they turn over the sky? On the other hand, Lady Fanghua of Yin Yang Demon School looked at him strangely. What did this mean? This old man is Chu Yulong, this old man has stayed there for 300 years in the demon continent, and the blood has flowed like a river. The little baby has been to the demon continent, but his experience is too little, and he doesn't know the power of the demon continent. At this time, the great master didn't have time to think about the intention of Lady Fanghua's gaze, and directly said, "Listen to this old man's command. This old man guarantees that you will be safe." Chu Yulong estimated that he couldn't think of it. Lady Fanghua looked at him with eyes full of sarcasm and sympathy. When Yang Chen was in the early Yuanying stage, he made her, a master of the early Deshang stage, obedient. After so many years, even Yang Chen was already in the middle Deshang stage. A mere master of the highest level, dared to bare his teeth in front of Yang Chen? "Senior Chu, is this the will of your alliance leader Yi?" Yang Chen didn't answer and just continued to ask calmly. His expression and tone didn't change in the slightest. Yi Yuankue, that child, is not someone who can order me around. Chu Yulong coldly snorted and indifferently said, I don't care what he said to you. I don't want to bet the lives of so many experts of the Four Seas Alliance on a kid like you. Does that mean that Senior Chu doesn't approve of the conditions that Alliance Master Yi has agreed to? Yang Chen slowly withdrew the smile on his face and looked straight at Chu Yulong as he asked. If you want to say so, it's not impossible. Chu Yulong sat opposite Yang Chen and said in a loud voice, this kind of big event has nothing to do with the participation of a third-rate sect like Chunyang Palace. If you are obedient, I might consider finding a place for the people of Chunyang Palace to rest. If you are not obedient, then leave the formation map and go back to where you came from. Chu Yulong said very bluntly, but Yang Chen did not directly answer, but looked at the others. Seeing Yang Chen look over, Yang Chen's wives and concubines stood on Yang Chen's side without hesitation. Lady Fanghua also did not hesitate and followed the other women. The elder of Wuji Demon School and an elder of the Demon Clan looked left and right, hesitated a little, and then stood on Yang Chen's side. The people of the Dao sect and the Demon Clan completely stood on Yang Chen's side, and a sect of the Demon Clan also supported Yang Chen. The remaining Demon Clan sect and a member of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance seemed to have a tacit understanding and took a few steps back. Although they did not clearly indicate that they would stand on Chu Yulong's side, it also indirectly showed that they were not helping either side. They probably planned to see how the situation would turn out. Even if you want to burn the bridge after crossing the river, you should do it after crossing the river. Yang Chen suddenly laughed, and there seemed to be a helpless expression on his face. He looked at Chu Yulong and asked with a bitter smile, Senior, aren't you a little too impatient? Boy, let me tell you a fact. Chu Yulong did not feel embarrassed at all. He looked at Yang Chen with a face full of guidance. Don't think that they will fight for you if they stand on your side. No one will fight with me for the small Chunyang Palace. In this world, the one with the bigger fist is the one who has the right. That makes sense. Yang Chen listened and nodded repeatedly. There was not the slightest embarrassment on his face. I really have to thank you for telling me this, Senior. A wise man submits to the circumstances. Chu Yulong's expression changed, and he gave a thumbs up to Yang Chen. Since you can say these words, you are not one of those pedantic old pedants. For this reason, I will help you this time. Be obedient, and when you arrive, I will naturally give you a place to stand. Well said, well said. I still have to thank you, Senior, for your help. Yang Chen immediately smiled, and his eyes narrowed. Looking at Yang Chen's sensible words, Chu Yulong finally showed a smile on his face. Shi Shanshan, who was beside Yang Chen, frowned. She stared at Chu Yulong with a murderous look. However, even though she was so angry, Shi Shanshan did not do anything. Her husband was still here, and Shi Shanshan had to give him face. In fact, not only Shi Shanshan, but also Yang Chen's wives and concubines did not give Chu Yulong face. If it were not for her husband not allowing them to fight, they would have already taught this old guy a lesson. Why, girls, are you not convinced? Chu Yulong looked around at the women and asked with a sneer, before your respective lords set off, didn't they tell you not to use the Grand Supreme easily? None of the women spoke, but they all clenched their fists. Chu Yulong was not afraid at all. He directly met Shi Shanshan's cold and severe gaze and asked with a sneer, could it be that Cold Plum Fairy still wants to teach this old man a lesson? Shi Shanshan was furious. She was about to rush out, but Yang Chen beat her to it and shouted, Shanshan, don't get angry. Hearing Yang Chen's voice, Shi Shanshan abruptly retracted her foot that had almost stepped out. She stood where she was and looked at Chu Yulong with the same pity as Lady Fanghua. Old Ho! Yang Chen rushed to the cabin and shouted. Ho Yun's figure immediately appeared on the deck. Ho Yun looked very satisfied. He was holding a half-eaten peach in one hand, dripping with juice, and a jade wine flask in the other. His breath reeked of alcohol as he appeared in front of everyone. Senior Chu Yulong said that whoever's fist is bigger is right. Yang Chen pointed at Chu Yulong and said to Ho Yun, "Old Ho, show him whose fist is bigger." Chapter 1453. Fight. Ho Yun's eyes immediately lit up. He casually threw away the peach in his hand and picked up the wine pot. After gulping down the wine, he threw away the empty wine pot as well and walked over to Chu Yulong with an excited expression. "I like it." Ho Yun's current cultivation base had reached the level of the peak Deshang stage, and he was only one step away from ascending. If it was just about the realm, it could be said that Ho Yun was the one with the highest cultivation base in Chunyang Palace. Even the old tree demon Gui Shanyu could not compare with Ho Yun in this regard. Among the wives and concubines of Yang Chen, the one who had the most contact with Ho Yun was Gong Sunling. Other people, including Gao Yu, only knew that Ho Yun's strength was amazing, that he was the incarnation of the mighty Ape King, and that his cultivation base was high. Of course, Ho Yun was also famous in Chunyang Palace. In the battle to exterminate the Taishanmen, he also killed a master of the peak Deshang stage alone. As long as people who have studied Chunyang Palace, they basically know the name of Ho Yun. Chu Yulong was obviously familiar with the masters of Chunyang Palace. When Ho Yun jumped out, he was not surprised at all. He had long known that there was a master of the Deshang stage who liked to fight in Chunyang Palace, but he always felt that the rumors were wrong. Just now, Chu Yulong said so blatantly that he wanted to break the agreement. He did not believe that Ho Yun, who was at the peak Deshang stage, could not hear it in the cabin. But Ho Yun did not react at all. He only cared about eating and drinking, which was not in line with the rumored master with a fiery temper. He was also a master who bullied the weak and feared the strong. When he saw that he was a master of the highest level, he immediately became a turtle. Little did he know that Ho Yun was so obedient because he was around Yang Chen. Ho Yun had experienced a lot of battles, but the most enjoyable times were when he went out with Yang Chen. He didn't have to think about it at all. As long as Yang Chen let him kill, he could rest assured and boldly have a good time. After that, he did not have to worry about any consequences. It was not so comfortable for him to go out alone. When he was overseeing the 100,000 great mountains, he always had to discuss with others, which was a hindrance. Therefore, as long as he followed Yang Chen, Ho Yun would definitely listen to Yang Chen. He would fight however he was told to. If Yang Chen did not say anything, Ho Yun would not make a move. Now that Yang Chen had made it so clear that he wanted Ho Yun to teach Chu Yulong a lesson, Ho Yun immediately became excited. Yang Chen knew very well what old Ho was thinking when he was fighting a grand supreme expert. Chu Yulong listened to Yang Chen's understated words, and his heart was also furious. However, he was also a cunning person. He knew very well in his heart that if he couldn't convince the number one master of Chunyang Palace, who was pushed out by Yang Chen, it was impossible to make Yang Chen obedient. No matter what, Yang Chen was also a master of the Deshang stage, and he was also the only fifth-grade alchemist master in the mortal world. If he gave in because of a few words, wouldn't it be too shameful? Since Grandmaster Yang has such a refined interest, this old man will play with you. Chu Yulong stood up with a confident smile and turned to Ho Yun. Ho Yun had already jumped into the air, waving his hands and feet as if he was moving his hands and feet. He looked impatient. Chu Yulong did not neglect and flew directly into the air, standing 20 feet away from Ho Yun in the air. Seeing that Chu Yulong was ready, Ho Yun screamed and immediately rushed up. The distance between the two was not far, and Ho Yun's speed was fast. He was almost in front of Chu Yulong in an instant. Ho Yun's huge fist, with a sharp wind sound, blasted directly at Chu Yulong's head. Chu Yulong was not willing to show weakness and also blasted his fist over. The two masters of the monster race and rogue cultivator alliance, who were watching from a distance, were also judging the strength of the Four Seas Alliance and Chunyang Palace. To be honest, if Chu Yulong of the Four Seas Alliance really succeeded, they didn't mind kicking Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace aside. So what if he was a 5th-grade alchemist master? How could he compare to a huge territory in the Demon Continent? Yang Chen actually let Ho Yun and Chu Yulong fight. The two masters sneered in their hearts. Chu Yulong was a master who had been famous for more than 1,000 years. Ho Yun's reputation was only for a few hundred years. The two could not be compared at all. What's more, Chu Yulong was a great master, at least at the level of the 2nd-grade human immortal, but Ho Yun was only at the peak of the Deshang stage. It was clear at a glance which was higher and which was lower. In their hearts, Ho Yun's challenge to Chu Yulong was nothing more than a mantis trying to shake a tree. Maybe Yang Chen wanted a reasonable reason to step down. They hoped that in this battle, Ho Yun would not be too ugly by Chu Yulong. Otherwise, if Yang Chen refused to take out the formation, Chu Yulong would not dare to really do anything to Yang Chen. The moment the two fists collided, the two masters who were watching seemed to see the scene of Ho Yun being sent flying. However, the next situation made the two masters who were watching directly widen their eyes and mouths, and they could no longer close them. Boom! The two fists collided, and a figure flew out like a cannonball. However, the figure that flew out was not Ho Yun, who the two masters looked down upon, but the great master Chu Yulong, who was still insufferably arrogant a second ago. Not only that, the fist that Chu Yulong and Ho Yun had used to punch each other had already become red and swollen. There seemed to be a slight, almost inaudible cracking sound in the midst of the huge clash of fists. It sounded like the sound of bones breaking. The people present were all masters of the Deshang stage. How could they not hear this sound? However, unlike Yang Chen's family, who seemed to have a natural expression, even the master of Wuji Demon School was shocked. Because of Yi Zhenxiong's strict instructions, the master of Wuji Demon School still stood on the side of Yang Chen, but this did not mean that he was optimistic about Yang Chen and Ho Yun. However, Ho Yun's performance was so evil that he did not know how to describe it. Ho Yun did not stop after one punch. Yang Chen said that he would let Chu Yulong know whose fist was bigger. How could one punch know everything? Therefore, even if Chu Yulong had already flown out, Ho Yun still followed his figure in an instant. Next, a group of masters only saw the scene of Ho Yun grabbing Chu Yulong, the great master, and kicking him. In the face of Chu Yulong, Ho Yun was not polite at all. His face, body, chest, and back, no matter where, Ho Yun greeted him. It was just a series of punches and kicks. After a series of punches, Chu Yulong, who was still pretending to be a dog, became a mess with a black nose, a swollen face, and a crooked chin. Cool. This old guy is asking for a beating. Ho Yun scolded mercilessly as he beat him. How dare you talk to my young master like this? Are you blind? Today I will show you whose fist is bigger.